It's time for Twit This Week in Tech. We have a great panel for you. Stacey Higginbotham is here. Richard Campbell is here. And from TechCrunch, Anthony Ha. Of course, we're going to talk about what to expect at CES this year. Of course, Stacey is all about IoT. We'll talk about Matter. We'll talk about AI. And then the banned words of 2025. Words we never want to hear again. All that and more. Coming up next on Twit.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Twit, This Week in Tech, episode 1013, recorded Sunday, January 5th, 2025. Calamari in crisis. It's time for Twit This Week in Tech, the show we cover the week's tech news. Brand new year, brand new news, and a lovely panel assembled for your delectation. Stacey Higginbotham is here, longtime host of This Week in Google. She still does Stacey's Book Club in our club, and she's now a policy fellow at Consumer Reports, where she just wrote a lovely piece on why all IoT devices should have updatable firmware. They should have an expiration date. Yeah?
Yeah,
that was
my
you?
2025 big thing. That's all I'm going to talk about next year.
Well, actually, we brought you here to talk about Matter because you're also a home, or at least
okay.
I'll
talk about that too.
Do you still do IoT stuff? You don't do Stacey on IoT. You don't do the website. Do you pay attention to it?
I totally pay attention to it. It's still my job to pay attention to it.
Oh, good.
But most of my time is cybersecurity, and then IoT devices. I know, it's weird.
There's plenty to talk about in that area. Goodness knows. Wonderful to see you again. We had a fun book club a couple of weeks ago, and we are now voting on the next book. But I gave everybody plenty of time to vote. So if you're in Club Twit, go to the Stacey's Book Club section, and you can look at the 4 books.
Yeah, who's winning?
Oh, I haven't checked. I should check.
Well, I'll check.
I always save a credit on Audible so that I can get the book if I haven't read it yet.
I can never find where the poll gets.
So these are the various things. Hum by Helen Phillips. Those Beyond the Wall by Micaiah Johnson. The Practice, the Horizon, and the Chain, which sounds a little bit like The Cook, the Thief, and Her Lover by Sophia Samatar, and Orbital by Samantha Harvey. 13 days left to vote.
I have Orbital in my stack to go to Mexico.
Oh, yeah. You're going to read it?
Yeah. On paper, too, just because She Who Must Be Obeyed suggested I read something on paper.
That's Richard
you should
Campbell.
Read it on paper. I listened to it, and I felt it was so literary and possibly beautiful, and I missed a lot of that beauty because I was
right now it's
doing laundry.
I'm going to read it. I normally read on a Kindle, but to actually read on papers.
Papers, really. That's Richard Campbell. You may remember him from Windows Weekly, Run His Radio, and from the last episode of Twit. It's great to see.
Feeling a little fixture-ish here, Leo.
We liked you so much, we brought you back. Great to see you. Actually, we had Paris as inked in, but she's not feeling well. So thank you, Richard, for filling in at the last moment. We appreciate it. Also here from TechCrunch, she's their weekend editor, Anthony Ha. Good to see you, Anthony.
Thanks for having me back. I'm excited.
Are you in San Francisco? Where are you located?
No, I'm in New York. I'm filming in my beautiful Harlem apartment.
It is beautiful. That's why I asked, because San Francisco is famous for what they call the railroad apartments, where it's just it's narrow but long, right? And it looks like you're in a railroad room, narrow but long.
My apartment is like that too. And there was definitely a period in 2020 where we would experiment with different Zoom setups, and it would either look like I was in the longest the apartment where there was all depth or no depth. And ultimately, I just gave up on having a good setup, and I like this spot, and that's how it is.
I think every Zoom backdrop should have what do they call that? Convergence point in perspective. It should have that. I can't remember what the name
is for.
The vanishing point.
Vanishing point.
There we go. Yeah.
That's even better. Every room should have a vanishing point. I like that.
Is that where the gravity well sits?
Yeah, that's the black hole. Did you see now, because they've been looking at black holes, they think there is no dark matter, that time is variable. And that explains the lumpiness in the universe.
Wait, when did this happen?
Just the other day.
I literally just read the paper this weekend.
Actually, there was a study a few years ago that indicated maybe this was the case, and they've done some more work. And now they're pretty convinced that
it's a very good theory, and it's an old one. It's been around for 20 years. This idea that applying general relativity, including mass in your time calculations when you get to extreme numbers, means that between the galaxies and then in the void, expansion is much faster than where gravity is present and slows expansion. And that actually, when you start adding up those numbers, gets awfully close to the dark energy offset. It
matches what but the dark energy was just something made up.
Just like dark matter. They're all fabrications to solve for problems.
Right.
In the case of dark matter, it's like, and 70% of everything is something we don't know.
And they're saying that this new model fits a little bit better than the dark matter model, which is very good. And you know what? I'm surprised they didn't come up with this sooner, because that makes sense. Well, we know that mass slows time, right?
Yeah,
that's
always there.
Good science. It just once you figure it out, it makes sense. You're like, oh,
that's right. That's a good point.
Until the James Webb Space Telescope, you couldn't measure it well enough to prove it. And so this is a fallout of the third wave of the JWST measurements that started to be precise enough to say, hey, this might be correct.
Some science projects are really good.
Yeah,
that's a good science project.
We create new senses for our civilization.
Isn't that amazing?
We measure things.
Back to the somewhat less interesting CES. It starts tonight with CES Unveiled, the Consumer Electronics Show's official kind of mini show. And then tomorrow is PepCom and Showstoppers. And then the doors open Tuesday or Wednesday, Stacey? You were looking up the schedule. None of us are there. That's the key point.
Yes.
And Anthony, you kind of put it succinctly. I'm now senior enough. I don't have to go.
I don't know if I used those exact words.
Okay.
But, I don't have to go anymore, which is nice. We have a huge TechCrunch has a huge team there.
Sure.
It's always a little bit miserable, but it's also a great. Usually, I mean, it's always a mixed bag. Like, it's exciting because there's always like new stuff, and it's always like such a grind because there's so much trash there.
So Lisa and I have a kind of ongoing debate. It's expensive for us to go because we have to bring stuff, and it's tens of thousands of dollars. So we haven't gone since before COVID. The last CES I went to was January 2020. And I'm kind of the opinion you don't really see a lot of important stuff there. Am I wrong on that?
I think, okay, look, it is a grind. And I will say last year I went and I didn't have to cover anything. And that was like the best CES I ever had. Because like, you just get to walk around and be like, oh my God, that looks so cool. So I think there are two, like, it's easy to be like, oh, it's a grind. It's not a lot of cool stuff. You can probably cover it better from far away. And that is true. But hidden inside some of the techier booths, if you go to like Qualcomm's booth or even Intel's booth, you go to like these weird Eureka Park booths, you can actually see the future of technology. And I'm not paid by Gary Shapiro at all, but
head of the Consumer Electronics Association.
Yeah, you can see trends and things emerging very early on. And it's a great time as a reporter to talk to people in ways that they normally won't talk to you. So, you can casually have conversations and learn more in like 10 minutes than you could in like a 30-minute interview with a PR person involved, right? You may not be able to quote it. I mean, you actually totally could. Like, I loved it. I mean, I hated it, but I also loved it.
Well, and certainly if you're covering IoT and home automation.
Even if you're covering, I mean, I feel like
TVs for sure. Yeah. But what else? I mean, the last time I was there in 2020, there were a lot of things to make food, like bread makers, but then there was
don't look at the finished technology. Look at the building blocks.
That was my mistake.
Go to the chip guys, go to the satellite guys, go to anybody like you see what they're pitching to their customers that will be in your devices in 3 to 5 years, maybe.
Yeah. Because there always is at CES kind of a trend. There will be this year a lot of stuff with unnecessary AI glued into it. Right.
Yeah,
That'll be the
CES
thing.
this year, like, I'm not going to say, okay, ignore it if it has AI, but yes, everything's going to have a thin wash of AI the same way it used to have a thin wash of like Madam A and
Or blockchain.
or blockchain or whatever. You can just safely, I mean, you can't ignore it as a journalist, but as someone who cares about technology, you can totally ignore all that. And you can say, okay, if everybody's doing AI, let's talk about energy savings because that's a big, huge problem and cost center. So let's go talk to the chip guys about how people are tweaking silicon to make that run more efficiently.
Yeah.
Are there cool cooling technologies that you can find? That's where you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That would be of more interest. But you see, you are an actual reporter and capable of digging deeper. I am a superficial guy, and I go there and I see the robot that delivers toilet paper rolls and think, I never want to come back here again. I don't. And all the local news, by the way, they go to the events on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday with their camera crews. They do an interview with the first thing they see in the door, which one year was the haptic fork. Remember that? The buzzing fork. And then the last
Those are
time I was
actually
there.
used.
What?
That's a real tool that.
Oh,
people
no,
use.
that's for people who have stability
Parkinson's.
issues. Yeah. But no, this wasn't for that. This was a haptic feedback fork.
It's like something to do with diet, right?
Yeah, it was dopey. And then the last time I was there, Kohler had a robot that would bring you a roll of toilet paper if you ran out, which was never intended as a product. It was really about getting the local TV crews to do a bit on it, and then you get some publicity. So that's why I kind of have a negative reaction to it. But you're of course, as always, Stacy, I feel chastened. You're right. We should celebrate.
Sorry.
I feel like the worst excesses of the tech industry are shown there. But then, of course, there are people who are doing important work. You're right.
And you are also right, Leo. The worst excesses of the tech industry are there.
Can I ask you a question, though, on a technical thing? How did you get the CR and Consumer Reports to flip around? That's amazing. It was backwards the last time.
It was I manually flipped it.
Oh, you did, really? Oh,
I have a Kohler robot back there. Call him over.
Did it bring you a roll of toilet paper? Well,
exactly. It's like toilet paper. And
actually, that would be one of the things that you would go there, and I'm sure so would Anthony and Richard, and say, "Hey, all this AI is nice, but who's going to pay for the power?" Mm-hmm. There was a story this week in Bloomberg that said AI is using so much power, it's degrading the grid. The headline, AI needs so much power, it's making yours worse. What people don't realize is that, am I showing the wrong screen or is that?
No, that was my fault. My bad.
Okay. The AI data centers are distorting. Now, Richard, you're going to have to explain this because you're the autodidact. They're distorting the normal flow of electricity. And so there's a map that shows you where there is brownouts in effect from these AIs, which cause damage to home appliances, especially in areas like Chicago and Data Center Alley and Nova, North Virginia, where distorted power readings are way above normal.
The problem here, and it'll get resolved, is that the data centers aren't reporting their consumption dynamically back to the power system because their consumption levels are hard to measure. They're not like regular humans.
Well, and also we have a dumb grid, right? They've talked for years about making a smart grid.
The grid's getting smarter, but major power consumers like an aluminum smelter is a great example of this. Massive consumer of electricity. And they actually converse with the power company before they crank up the inductors. For exactly that reason, it's hundreds of megawatts and you'll knock the grid over. Yeah. And here you've got these data centers in neighborhoods and their consumption behavior is unusual. It's kind of symmetrical, but it has its own peaks. If it was the same all the time, it wouldn't be a problem, but it's not. And it doesn't follow the normal shape of humans, which is, more power consumed during the day, less at night. And so the impact on the grid is that it sags the cycle rate. Normally we're running at 60 hertz. So when you overload the grid before it actually trips, it'll drop down to 59. 59 is actually a disaster. 59.6 is bad enough. And that can damage certain coils and certain
it also gives you a good excuse for being late for work if you have an older electric clock, because the older electric clocks used the 60 hertz per second for their timing. And if it's off, the clocks get off. I think modern clocks are a little bit more sophisticated than that, but
I have an IoT device that can help for protecting your home appliances and could report your fluctuations back if you would like.
This comes from a company called Whisker Labs. They have sensors.
That's it. Yeah, it's the Ting.
Yeah. So they have.
You were a
sensors.
data source in this, Stacy, probably.
I was 100. Well, my power doesn't go out for this, but yeah,
Doesn't have to go out. That's the thing. We're used to brownouts or blackouts, but bad harmonics may not be visible to you until your refrigerator fries.
it is visible to me because I have a Ting. They alert me.
Aha! So you have one of these Whisker devices on your.
It's a Ting. We've talked about it on prior shows. It's called Ting. You plug it in. It's $50 a year, or if you have certain insurance companies, they actually pay for it because it's designed to detect.
Oh, they say
faults.
it's for electrical fires. They detect, but they also can detect problems with your power coming into your house, not just it detects issues with your power throughout your house and coming into your house. And since I do my own wiring, God.
Well,
that sounds bad.
not that kind of wiring. I have an electrician if I'm going to swap out my electrical panel. But I
have this vision of you walking around in rubber boots.
No, just like when I'm replacing like light switches and
no, you're always doing that. Yeah.
Lamps.
So does the Ting? So I'm looking for something central. Is there something you could put centrally on your system that would then monitor the whole system, or does this have to go in each outlet?
No, Ting just goes. It just sits on one outlet in your home.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
It's just tracking it though. It will let you know if there's an issue, but it doesn't stop anything. It's not like a breaker.
Yeah, but it'll let you know. That's the point.
It lets you know. It's like, hey, by the way, your power is really yucky.
It's $100.
It's $100 now.
Yeah, it comes with something called a fire prevention service. I don't know what that is.
Oh, it's if they detect problems, they actually pay for you to. They call you and pay for an electrician to come out.
Oh, nice. All right, I'm going to buy one. $100 not to have a fire sounds good.
It's one kind of fire.
There's other fires.
Yeah, I was like, just so you know,
You may still have a fire.
You mean I shouldn't have candles on my Christmas tree? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I was like, your Christmas tree, if it's still there, probably will go up.
Probably time to get rid of it.
Cooking with grease. Clean your grease traps.
Yeah. That was one of my Instagram purchases during the break. I bought a blanket that you throw over your grease fire. Fireman Dan recommended it, so I thought, that's got to be good.
Do you clean your grease traps? Because that's
what's a grease trap?
I mean, we don't have those things that are, those. Okay, you do know. Never mind.
I'm teasing. Anyway, but you think, Richard, that this is a short-term problem, that we're going to fix this?
Yeah, I think what you're going to see is a mandate now for these data centers to start reporting their intended consumption in real time back to the power grid.
And
that's the real issue.
Lots of new data centers going online.
Well,
Courts
it's about to only get weirder, Leo, because now this is where you get, why is Microsoft leasing 3 Mile Island Reactor 1 and Amazon is talking to NewScale, and what's really happening is the tech giants just are going to put their own power on and are very likely going to make excess they're going to sell back to the grid.
Well, they've already spent between January and August of 2024, Microsoft, Meta, Google, and Amazon spent $125 billion on AI data centers, according to JP Morgan. And that's probably just the tip of the iceberg, right? That's just those 4. And I'm sure there'll be lots more to come. And let's hope they're building them with appropriate harmonic controls or something, reporting that with fire blankets. I don't know, something. They need something. Maybe they should have a Ting in every one of them.
Well, I'm sure they do. Quality of their power is very important, which is one of the reasons they're stressing the harmonics of the rest of the grid.
Right. So it's a reporting issue or is it a filtering issue?
No, I suspect this is if you can warn the grid that you're about to increase consumption, and you know what your real-time consumption is, the grid can respond.
Right.
But like I said, this is a normal industrial problem. Major power consumers normally report into the grid when they're going to increase their demand meaningfully. And the idea that we now have enough data centers that run in the megawatt class, like they should qualify, should be getting into that reporting mechanism. So that will come. But again, it's like the relationship between the tech giants and the power industry is about to get really convoluted if they start producing their own power as well.
Yeah, I know our local power company, which is not government run, as a private business, government regulated private business, Pacific Gas and Electric, doesn't like us. They forbade us from putting too many solar panels. They didn't want us to compete with them. You can only put enough solar panels on your roof to accommodate your own projected needs. You couldn't put more power back into the grid.
This is an issue that's even bigger in Australia, and it's got more to do with destabilizing the grid, right?
Really? It's not about money.
No, the power doesn't flow symmetrically. It can't go back up the transformer the same way it came down. And so what does happen when there's so much residential solar, and in places like Sydney, they're close to 25%, they'll actually blow transformers off the poles.
Because they're putting too much power back in?
Is that the jump down from like voltage? Yeah. And
so now the requirement in New South Wales, which is where this region has the largest problems, is that you can only put solar on if the power company has the option to disconnect you on demand. So if they're having grid destabilization, they just pop you off the feedback loop.
Right.
So they stop that problem.
Oh, see, and I thought it was just a greedy corporation trying to keep us from competing with them.
Well, there are ways aren't there? I mean, there's technologies that we're not investing in that can allow for that two-way flow if we decide we want it. That requires that requires upgrading the distribution grid all the way down to like transformers, all the way back to like the big, I don't know what they're called in the power world. I think of them as.
I bet Richard does.
Your transformer is like a D-Slam. What is the big like station that you see that would be like a CLEC?
It's basically along the same line. There's this idea of doing community electricity. So natively, those panels aren't putting out good house power anyway. They have to step down. And so if you could feed them into a community management tool so they could be pushed onto the grid and can be pushed to any of the houses and then are stepped down at point of use, you get a lot more flexibility. So community power sources are a really interesting idea because now you can build a reasonable size wind turbine in that mix as well, or two. And
you would have batteries and power conditioner.
Primarily for conditioning, but just for stability's sake. But it's just, that the solar on the roof is a real easy solve, especially in a place like California, to get you off the grid. It's not a good way to support the grid.
Okay, that's good to know. I didn't even know that you were an expert on this, Richard, but I knew that you would know. I knew that you would know. Richard's the guy you go to, whatever the question is. He's our local AI, basically.
This is just a set of talks I've done on energy.
I know, you're an expert
now.
Yeah.
And so I specifically did a study for New South Wales, and we went over all of the power production in New South Wales. And that's why I was completely up to speed on how they're compensating for the solar utilization.
Interesting.
They've now asked me to do Victoria as well. So now I'm going to do the state of Victoria this spring.
It's nice to have a smart person on the show, isn't it, Stacey?
Like a fellow smart person?
Yes. You get a lot of smart people on the show, Leo.
It's good to have 3 smart people on the show. I'm the one.
I'm pretty sure Anthony's smart too.
I know you are. That's why you're on. That's why I always say this is the week's tech news covered by the smartest people.
I always feel awkward when there's someone who actually knows things on the show.
Yeah, it's always good. It's always good.
And to be clear,
I feel bad because I'm like, what am I doing here?
No. You know something. Tell us what you're an expert in, Anthony.
Oh, nothing. I mean, I guess I'm really good at trivia at like naming the years that movies came out in. I can always tell you a year a movie came out in. So
it's I have a little Rolodex of people and their expertise. So Richard's got 8 cards in there, but I'm gonna add to your card.
That's the one line in my card.
On Windows Weekly, our Richard's co-host on Windows Weekly, Paul Thurrott's only expertise is Call of Duty. So it's perfect. One thing is good. That's all you really need.
That's my one thing.
What else are we excited about at CES? Is there anything else we're expecting?
You were excited about Matter?
Well, I think should this not be a coming out party for Matter? I know it's been so. The idea was Google, Apple, a bunch of others. Was the Zigbee Alliance involved? A few of the big players in home automation realized that having a Tower of Babel with each of them speaking a different language, Samsung with its smart things, was not a good idea. That there should be some unified standards so that a homeowner can, instead of having 15 hubs to control all the different devices, have something like Apple's HomeKit or Google's Home to control it, right? And Matter was a consortium of these companies to try to solve this problem. But in their first specification, they didn't seem to solve much, did they, Stacey?
No, well, I mean, it was the first thing, and what they promised was like a lot. But no, it was terrible. So is Matter 2.0 coming out at CES? I believe it is, right? I believe, maybe. I don't know about that. I truly don't. Sorry. I'm like, is the official Matter 2.0
maybe it's 3.0.
out?
I don't know. I got the impression that Matter was going to matter a little more this year, and that
they
CES
are doing. Yes, they are doing more stuff. It is 2 years. They planned a 6-month kind of cycle for updates.
Right.
I just don't know if we're at 2.0 or 2.1 or that's the minutia I'm not covered. But Matter, it uses Wi-Fi and Thread. And so what's happened is a lot of the really terrible things that Matter was bad at was because Thread wasn't really good at them.
And that was a Google radio technology, right? Thread.
Yes, Thread was Tony Fadell pushed that way back in the day.
Yeah.
But they all added to, like, the Thread consortium has not just Google. It's an open consortium with lots of people in it,
right,
or lots of companies. So they're fixing Thread, which will then in turn fix Matter, and presumably the biggest complaints that we've had about Thread have been fixed in Thread.
Good.
So,
and Thread is in a lot of devices, including a number of Apple devices.
Yes.
And Amazon's been putting them, I believe, in their Amazon Echo.
Thread is it runs on top of the Zigbee protocol. So if you have a Zigbee radio, well, it runs across, not the Zigbee. It runs across 802.15.4. I always mess that one up, which is at the Mac and Phi layer. That's what Zigbee
is that a Wi-Fi standard? Or no?
No, 802.15. 802.11 is Wi-Fi.
Oh, okay, right.
Anyway, so but it is an IEEE standard.
Right.
Well, the underlying Mac and Phi layer are those radio layers, the silicon layers.
Generally speaking, I always think that CES is best at home theater stuff. There's always, when you go in the main hall at the beginning and they open the doors and everybody flows in, there's always a giant, I think it's Panasonic does it, right, Anthony? With the giant TVs. Like the arch of TVs that you
I know what you're talking about. I don't know who does it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's LG.
Maybe it's LG.
Yeah. Didn't they do the transparent one last year? So this huge wall.
They do this. And then all the TV guys are in one kind of Sony's in the back, but there's LG and Panasonic. They're all there. And usually you go there to see what's new in TVs, but we haven't seen since QD OLED a couple of years ago a lot of progress in new TV standards. We're still waiting for micro OLED to kind of take off. I don't think you
go to CES for TVs. I feel like TVs are such an also. Oh, okay. I'm like, you go to CES for TVs.
I haven't been since 2020. You know why? Because Scott Wilkinson, who does our Home Theater Geeks show, is famous for bringing a pedometer and walking miles and miles at CES to see all the TVs. In 2020, we walked along with him. It was very fun. You can go back on YouTube and see it. But there hasn't been a lot of new stuff since then.
Discord's reminding us that HDMI 2.2 comes out at CES.
Oh, thank God. 2.1 has been such a How many different standards for one kind of cable can there be? 1.4A, 1.4B, 2.1.
That's DisplayPort. That's a different thing entirely.
Oh, okay.
But it
Anyway.
probably
Look
gets
at
you 8K at
USB.
120 or 144, though, is what that
I
does,
think
right?
that was the key, right? Is more bandwidth across these HDMI cables, and now they can do 8K. So 2.1A, Keith 512 is saying 80 gigabytes a second, which is all the gigabytes. That's a lot of gigabytes. I guess enough for 8K.
One of my first CESs was the one of the years of 3D TV, and just
there was a
CES
big,
just like, this is going to be it. 3D
that
TV.
was a revolution. Yeah. And remember, I mean, for a while, everybody thought mixed reality VR was going to be the big thing. That was a couple of years ago. That's why I don't get too excited about new technologies emerging at CES. But I will be, just for you, I will be excited about HDMI 2.2. just for you.
If there's one thing
Who's
take from this year's
producing an 8K?
CES.
Nobody wants an 8K. 8K at this point is really I think for VR more than anything else, because unless you're sitting that close to the screen, you're not going to see the pixels on a 4K.
Well, and more saliently, who's recording anything in 8K?
Right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm like, who's
Well, in
making
Japan,
anything content?
all of these standards emerged in Japan at first, right?
Yeah, but I'll tell you, when they get accepted? When the NFL implements them.
That's right. And NFL is, I'm sorry to say, barely HD.
Yeah.
So
they're still fighting for 4K because bandwidth problems.
Right.
It's just a
That's
lot of
That's
data
right.
to haul around.
I have to say, though, occasionally I'll get a 4K game on my YouTube TV. I paid extra for that. And it really does look fantastic to see 4K. Not great for motion yet.
Is that why all of our TVs come with motion smoothing turned on?
Yeah, that's right.
Because that is staying in hotels over the holidays. I was like,
Oh, isn't it awful?
God. And you
Everything
can't
looks
get
like it's made of plastic.
inside a hotel room. You can't. Their TVs are running their special proprietary software, so you can't access the individual TV channel. Or
you
I
can't
couldn't
turn it off. Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, just give me your settings.
I remember when The Hobbit came out, and as you know, he's very much, Peter Jackson's very much into high frame rate, high resolution, high frame rate. He was pushing the 4K 120 and even higher. And somebody said, yeah, I saw it in 4K 120, and it looked like Gandalf got his staff at Wizards R Us. It looked like it was made out of resin, which it probably was, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem. You got all the props have to be upgraded. All the makeup has to be upgraded.
And that was
I
the
don't
problem with the
think the
original
makeup can be
1080p, right? Nobody looked good enough for 1080p.
That's right. I remember doing Live with Regis and Kelly back in the day. And Kelly had just started doing a sitcom in 4K. And so they brought in her makeup artist, and they were airbrushing the makeup on you. They just said, sit back, go like this. And they go with the airbrush. That only lasted once. They didn't keep doing that. Asus is going to showcase a 6K 216 pixels per inch television, the ProArt 32 QCV. But again, where's the content? But that's always the problem, isn't it? Maybe this is more for computers. That might be actually what we're looking at. This looks like a computer monitor.
Yeah, icons smaller than your fingernail.
Yeah, would you? Yeah, that's why we have to double the pixels.
Yeah, I got 216 PPI, but I got to run at 200% to see it.
Everything's exactly. So what have you gained?
What have I gained?
What have you gained?
Although I will say that I felt the same way about 4K, where I was just like, this is ridiculous. And then now, like, if I try to watch a 1080p thing on my TV, I'm like, this looks so, old fashioned and dinky, and everything should be 4K now. So maybe that's how we're going to feel about 8K next, or 6 or whatever.
You do get the habit, don't you, of and everything is just super crisp, and it feels like you're looking through a window.
Not my windows. My windows
But
are
I think
very
that
dirty.
that also underlines that for me, I like that Stacy has like a serious purpose at CES. For me, it's actually fun because it is this sort of becomes this like
It's a toy
graveyard
store.
of like abandoned technologies, of like
Yes.
futures that never pan out. And I think that's just as interesting as the futures that do pan out.
I'm with you, Anthony. I walk around CES looking at all the stuff that's going to amount to nothing.
Yeah, because I mean, and I always try to warn people about it. We'll probably do I should warn everybody. We'll do a CES show next week, and I'm sure Father Robert will bring a bunch of crap back, as he always does, from CES. And he gets so excited, about the 6-speaker system and that kind of thing. But almost always, these are things that aren't even necessarily going to be in production unless enough dealers order it in January so that they could sell it in December. So you're looking at stuff that even if it's a success, won't be out till the end of the year. And in many cases, never gets made because there wasn't enough interest. So it's a very speculative show. But if you know that, it's kind of fun to go see it.
Yeah, I wonder how many companies are showing up at CES with like 6 months worth of ramp left.
Right.
And they're like, if either
if we don't make it here,
well, or we're done.
Yeah.
Right. I've seen it. What was it? Remember the speaker system that was able to do 3D modeling to shape the sound to your ears? And it won all the awards at CES a few years ago. It was huge. 6 months later, they're out of business.
I think you're right. I think they probably had a very limited runway.
Yeah. They had burned everything to get to that point. They spent a huge amount of money on CES. They always had the right PR teams. They run all the awards. They did all the things. They just didn't get the sales they were going to need, or they just didn't. Maybe they did and they couldn't build it. They couldn't get the credit.
I was going to say they probably had the interest, but then they couldn't get. I mean, it costs money to fulfill those big sales content. Like if Best Buy is like, I would love to have you in the store.
All right, let me give you from last year.
Now we need 50,000 units.
Exactly.
And we need them in 3 months. Get going and get loans for that.
This is going to rest my case here. This is last year's Wired Magazine's Best of CES 2024. The Vivo at Home UTI Diagnostic Kit.
There you go.
The Eureka Dual Washing Bot. And the Adobe Edge Camera.
Okay, so the UTI tracking kit, those are available now, and their costs have gone down considerably in the last 2 years.
So there is.
I don't know that particular brand.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a huge market for that.
Okay, so maybe that wasn't so bad. Did you buy the Eureka Dual Washing Bot?
I don't know what that is.
It's
say more.
She said it is a robot vacuum in the pedestal, there it is, of your washing machine.
Oh, so it pulls the water from the washing machine so you don't have to plumb it. So then you've got basically the Roomba plus washing capabilities that's right. The robot mops dirty water tank drains into the same pipe as a washing machine. So you won't see something like that for like 5 more years, because that's something they're showing as a concept that then gets picked up, and like, think how often people replace their washing machines. But that's not a terrible concept.
It's an interesting idea. Here's the Adobe Edge camera. Maybe they shipped that.
That's the Abode.
Oh,
that's the Abode.
Never mind.
Yeah, that they do.
I a little dyslexia here. I'm sorry.
I think it was an intentional. I think that was an intentional confusion they did there.
Maybe. So is the Abode out there? Is it good? It's got a crazy Wi-Fi range. The Wired says.
No, did they do Wi-Fi Halo? Was that like nifty thing?
Yes.
Oh, Wi-Fi Halo is never going to happen. God.
It has a mile of wireless range.
Yeah, I don't know. They may have produced it, but I don't know if people are super.
Well, this is 2024. This is last year.
They are, of course, still for sale.
There you go.
Yeah,
the
along
best
with their security system.
Transportation, and I'm sure we'll see it again in CES this year, is the personal drone VTOLs, first vertical
eVTOLs.
Takeoff landing.
Most of which are now bankrupt.
Supernal eVTOL SA2, and they're bankrupt. It was from Hyundai.
I don't know if this one's bankrupt.
You see every year at CES, you see these.
Yeah.
Not in the sky, but
it was Hyundai's concept vehicle, so it was never meant to be produced.
How about the Milo Action Communicator? This is all from last year. I'm just pointing out that.
Oh, those are real.
Those are real? Okay.
Well, Milo is real. Again,
I remember this. It was a walkie-talkie, but it doesn't.
Walkie-talkie over.
It's like a really stupid, simple, like you can only call one person.
Yeah, I think it's designed to it's like a walkie-talkie that does. I think it uses like
it's hands-free.
Still for sale, $225.
Yeah.
There you go.
Bet they're selling like hotcakes.
Mm-hmm.
They might be. That's actually a pretty good niche if you can.
The Milo Berry Red is out of stock. In fact, all of them are out of stock.
Yeah, because
that's the end. That's the end right there. Never mind.
Somebody has taken the website down. That's
anyway. I don't want to belabor this, but
but I appreciate your thinking there, Stacey. That it's their concepts. They're not products.
Look for breakthrough concepts, not breakthrough products. I think that's smart.
Yeah,
and someday your robot vacuum will be living under your washing machine.
That's not, I mean, that may not be the way it goes, but it's valuable to have people thinking and offering things
it's
like
quite
that.
sensible.
Yeah.
And that's why I like the show, because you can like see that and be like, you can test that concept out and be like, okay, if that's going to work, what needs to come into place?
So why didn't you go this year, Stacey?
Because technically I'm not a reporter anymore.
Oh yeah, this isn't, but doesn't Consumer Reports have a presence of some kind? I would imagine.
They do, and I could have gone and justified it, but you know what? I went to Istanbul, I went to Philadelphia, I did all this DC travel. I'm
And on the whole, you'd rather be in Philadelphia, wouldn't you? All right.
Right.
I do love Istanbul.
I like Istanbul. We're going to take a little break. You're watching This Week in Tech, first show of a brand new year. And some interesting topics still to come, I promise you. Including the closest to the sun we've ever gotten. Richard Campbell is here from Windows Weekly and Run His Radio, our official polymath of the Twit Network. Anthony Ha, weekend editor for TechCrunch. Great to see you as always, Anthony, and Stacey Higginbotham from Consumer Reports, where she is a policy fellow and longtime friend of the network. Our show today brought to you by ZipRecruiter, another longtime friend of the network, longtime sponsor. It's a brand new year, 2025. As a business owner, I know there's, always a few roles you might want to hire for. Let's plan for growth. If you need to hire for your business, I want to recommend the easiest way to do it, to find qualified candidates, the one we use, ZipRecruiter. Right now, you could try it absolutely free. ZipRecruiter.com/twit. According to G2, ZipRecruiter is the hiring site employers most prefer. And I think I can say why we prefer it. It's fast. So the problem, of course, is when somebody resigns, gives you their 2-week notice, you got an opening, whether it's the fry cook or somebody in our continuity department. That opening has to be filled. And often in a small business like ours, it's us who we have to fill it. So there's an urgency to fill that position. But it's really important to find the right person because, a bad employee can bring the whole company down. A good employee can make everything sing. So you want to do it fast, but you also want to do it right. And that's what ZipRecruiter is so great. Their smart technology. As you post, we often post in the morning, right? At breakfast, Lisa will post the opening. And a couple of things happen. First, at the minute you post, it goes to more than 100 job boards, including social media sites. But then, almost immediately, ZipRecruiter starts looking at what you need and then all the resumes. They have more than 1 million current resumes on hand. And they go through those, and then their matching technology will find you the top talent and then send you a note saying, hey, here are 10 people who fit your needs. You take a look at them. You can scale them, you can rate them, you can rank them, and you can invite the top candidates to apply for your job. And I have to say, when you invite somebody to apply, you go right to the top of the stack. Remember, you're competing against a lot of other employers who are also looking, but you go right to this because you wanted them, right? That makes that job so much more desirable. It really works. Here's to a new year of hiring made easier with ZipRecruiter. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. For us, it's often within an hour or two. See for yourself. Go to this exclusive web address to try ZipRecruiter for free. When you go to this address, you're telling them you saw it here, which is important to us. ZipRecruiter.com/twit. ZipRecruiter.com/TWIT. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. We're so glad to have them and partner with them in 2025. ZipRecruiter.com/twit. The Parker Pro. You suggested this as a story, Richard. I think you're right. This is kind of the big thing. It happened on was it Christmas Day?
Christmas Eve. Yeah, it was their closest approach.
The Parker Solar Probe. Now, when I say it got within 3.86 million miles of the sun's surface, you might say, well, that's not that close. It's really close, isn't it?
Well, yeah, considering how far are we from the sun? We're 150 million kilometers from the sun, so
right.
It got awfully close. It's the closest we've gotten anything, and it survived it too, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And we're now a week after that event, so we're finally getting telemetry back from it because while it was doing that, it was too close to actually send any data to us. It was on the wrong side. Now it's swung back around.
So it was heavily armored, I guess, to survive the heat.
Shielded, but you don't need a lot of solar panels. Just a little bit is enough.
Yeah. It got really 6.1 million kilometers, got really close. This was the 22nd time it actually made a close approach. But this was the
moving
closest
at 190 kilometers a second, which
that makes it the fastest human-made object ever.
Yeah, that's moving. It's weird to think in terms of getting closer to the sun means going really, really fast, but that's what happens.
Well, but if you've ever put your hand in a flame, you realize speed is of the essence, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't want to spend a lot of time there in that hot environment.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just that. It's just that the gravitational effects are so easy. It accelerates it excessively.
So, so they have to, I would imagine, they're kind of glancing off of.
Yeah, they're skimming through the corona of the sun to take.
And hoping to have enough speed not to get trapped.
Well, they definitely do. It's actually really hard to be able to slow down enough to actually impact the sun. And that whole trope of just throw it into the sun turns out really difficult thing to do.
You can't?
Yeah, you couldn't get your speed right enough to actually get in there. You'll just get slingshot around and thrown back out.
Even if you aim right at the middle?
Yeah, it's not that easy to aim at the middle. You've got to really burn a lot of delta V to do that. So,
so this is a pretty big deal, I guess.
It's a remarkable machine and it's doing its job brilliant.
Yeah,
like not every one of them works out as well as this one did, but it did a fantastic job
in what NASA calls a hyper close regime. Parker cut through plumes of plasma still connected to the sun and close enough to pass inside a solar eruption. NASA said it's like a surfer diving under a crashing ocean wave. 500 times the hottest summer day we can witness on Earth. What are we looking for?
We're trying to understand why the corona is much harder than the interior of the sun. We're trying to understand the plasma regime, the behavior of the protons at this energy level is weird. We don't really understand all the magnetic effects, so we're just trying to measure the. And
what kind of instruments does Parker have? Do you know?
Most of the electromagnetic, because that's the main thing that they're dealing with there. It's just a huge level of field.
They're not like they don't have a little scoop to capture some plasma.
No, you could scoop once, but you're not going to have a scoop for very long after that. And we're not bringing anything back, right? This is not coming back to the Earth again. So they're just taking measurements and sending it back again.
They're sending telemetry back.
That's exactly right.
Very amazing.
Yeah, it's a great mission.
Yeah. Also related to that, we're going to have a new director of NASA come a couple of weeks from now.
Presuming it gets confirmed, right?
Yeah, I have a feeling he will because he first of all, he's an astronaut, right?
Well, Jared Isaacman is a kind of astronaut. He has paid to go into space a couple of times.
That's more than I've done.
Well, that's one way to spend your money.
He rode, of course, on a SpaceX vehicle, so he's
twice only and has done a spacewalk, which puts him in very rarefied atmosphere. A few hundred people have ever done that.
Right, Jared Isaacman. He's a tech billionaire.
Yeah, the company. But with Ship4 is his company.
What does Ship4 do?
Transaction processing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So nothing associated with space.
Nope. No, but then he's got a side business providing adversarial flying for air forces. So he owns his own air force because things.
Oh, that's right.
Right. He's got a collection of MiGs and A4s and a bunch of other aircraft. So he provides services for.
I forgot about that. I imagine this is of the various Trump nominees probably the least controversial.
He has his own Air Force.
Yeah.
Yes.
This implies that it's for defense or for something, as opposed to like he has a collection of planes.
He's gotten past a collection of planes, has a crew of pilots, and flies adversarial flight services for air forces.
They do training, Air Force training.
Okay, so he's like a mercenary with his own Air
so
Force.
far, he hasn't taken any missions. So far, he flies unarmed against other countries' air forces. Nominally, probably beats them too, but that's part of their training process. So
Okay,
That's actually
I just
super
wanted
cool.
I wanted the
No,
distinction. I was like, Air Force versus just
Yeah.
I own a lot of cool planes.
I always keep a matrix of which tech billionaire is closest to being Dr. No, and like owning your own Air Force.
He doesn't. He's not in a mountain, but he's close.
Yeah,
he would only be
have
the
a
fourth.
volcano is a good one too.
He would only be the fourth NASA administrator of 15 who has actually been in space. I think the only question would be if he would, and this might be a question for Jeff Bezos, who is competing with Elon Musk with his Blue Origin, is if he would favor SpaceX, because both of those trips to space and the spacewalk were in SpaceX's Starship.
I don't think that's the only question, but that's a question.
Yeah.
In the end, a NASA administrator's job primarily is to manage the bureaucracy of NASA.
And to
the
go to
bureaucracy of
Congress and say, give us money, right? I mean,
yeah.
Getting funding has
a
gotta be-
billionaire used to running a startup from the top of the stack, well equipped for the negotiations that are required
would say
between these
so.
different bureaucracies? I would say not.
no. Okay.
They're kind of used to saying this is what we're going to do, and people do it. And
Right.
it's not the environment you're in anymore.
Yeah. There is definitely a sense in a lot of these appointments where people are like, oh, well, this person has actual experience doing XYZ. And I'm kind of like, yeah, but when you're at the
Administrators are different.
top of,
Yeah.
Well,
And
and the current Bill Nelson, the current administrator, did fly in space also. He flew on the shuttle. But he also spent most of his time at NASA as an administrator.
Right.
So, he kind of makes sense as the NASA administrator because most of his experience has been dealing with bureaucracy.
Bezos did not have anything to say about Isaacsman's nomination, according to CNN.
I mean, if he's going to become the NASA administrator and you're Jeff Bezos, you probably don't want to piss him off. So
That's
better
true,
not
too.
have anything to say.
That's a good point. Interestingly, and not unrelatedly, Elon Musk has said, let's not go to the moon. NASA, of course, has been working to go to the moon. He says, let's go straight to Mars. Now,
He also has the current contract for the lunar lander, so I don't know what he.
it's a strange thing to say, yeah. NASA's planning to go to the moon with the Artemis mission, and the lunar lander is made by SpaceX. It's actually, the lunar mission is kind of a beast of many backs, right? I mean, they've got Boeing is involved. I mean, a bunch of companies are involved in this.
The backup lunar lander, the alternative besides the SpaceX one, is Blue Origin. And a few other
Okay.
companies.
So the human landing system is from SpaceX. They also supply food, cargo, and other logistics services to a lunar gateway in orbit around the moon. Why would Elon, privately, according to Wired, Elon has been critical of NASA's plans, suggesting the Artemis program has been moving too slowly. I don't think a lot of people would disagree with him on that, and is too reliant on contractors who seek cost-plus government contracts and are less interested in delivering results. That's actually a consensus opinion, I think, right?
Well, and NASA has for many years tried to push these non-cost plus contracts, these performance contracts. That's how COTS, the resupply of the space station, is done. That's how Crew Dragon and Starliner was supposed to be done. But you do have these institutions that are built around cost plus contracting, especially when you're doing truly innovative stuff. The James Webb Space Telescope was a cost plus deal. Why? They were only going to make one. Nobody really knew how much it was going to cost.
Right.
Now, admittedly, there were folks who knew it wasn't going to be $1 billion when they originally said $1 billion. But it turns out if you spend $1 billion, it's hard to cancel it after that.
Yeah. You kind of in for a penny, in for a billion.
Yeah. Or 8, as the case may be.
8?
8. It's
Christmas
a good thing
Day,
it worked.
Elon posted on X, quote, "The Artemis architecture is extremely inefficient as it is a jobs maximizing program." And that, by the way, is probably the case. That's what Congress does, right? Not a results maximizing program. Something entirely new is needed. Then the following Thursday, the next day, he said, "No, we're going straight to Mars. The moon is a distraction." Now, admittedly, these are just tweets, so they don't necessarily have the power of policy.
Although I think it takes on a lot more weight now than maybe it would have taken a year ago. And I think one of the things the Wired piece that you guys linked to in the show prep pointed out was that the part of the context here is this is kind of the first time. I mean, I haven't followed this closely, but it seems like this is the first time that Elon has really been so open in criticizing a NASA program.
Right.
And so before, like, he wants to stay on NASA's good side, and now he feels confident that, the person running NASA and and that person's boss are both going to be buddies of his, and so he can say whatever he wants.
The Wired says, although Musk is not directing U.S. space policy, he certainly has a meaningful say in what happens.
Good to be the
cool.
first buddy.
That's a cool thing.
I can't imagine, though, that Artemis would just be canceled. As you said, in for a couple of billion. It's kind of hard to withdraw, especially since Congress has to authorize
tens
all this,
of billions.
Tens of billions.
And arguably NASA has attempted to drop Artemis going all the way back to the Constellation program. And the Congress keeps putting it back into the budget because they set the budget.
Trump created the Artemis program at his last presidency, although he was probably never happy. He was calling for, Wired says, a major course correction at NASA. Mike Pence said in 2019, I call on NASA to adopt new policies and embrace a new mindset. If our current contractors can't meet this objective, then we will find ones that will. So this has been something that's been going on at least since 2019.
Are we not concerned about having the geopolitical factors at play with India and China landing on the dark side of the moon, access to water, access to mineral rights, things like that on the moon?
Well, don't you, and I think you said this before the show, Richard, don't you need the moon to go to Mars?
Well, there's a few cases. The silly part about going to Mars is what we already know from the International Space Station. The fastest we can get humans to Mars, about 6 months. And we routinely put humans on the space station for 6 months at a time. They exercise 2.5 hours a day, every day, to slow the rate of bone loss. And when they return to the Earth, they can't walk. They can't stand. In fact, it takes almost a year of rehabilitation to get your balance back and your eyes to recover, for your whole body to recover, to be functional. So you're going to fly a group of folks to the Mars in free fall for 6 months. Then they're going to arrive on Mars. There's nobody there to help them. We need artificial gravity. Now, that means creating a spinning structure, which we can do, but have never done.
It's so funny because every single sci-fi show ever has a centrifugal thing that creates gravity. We've never done it. Do we know how to do it? Or is that sci-fi?
That's sci-fi. But did you read the book A City on Mars? Richard, I'm sure you did.
Yes.
Yes. So not only are there the technical issues that they just demolish pretty utterly, then they go into the exciting psychological issues and the reproductive issues and all of the other, it is an amazing book for it. I just like giving it to people when they're like, we should go to Mars. And I'm like, read this.
Are you sure?
Mars is not the kind of place you want to raise a kid. Is that what you're saying?
Mars is not the place you want to, as a woman, I think about all the drama that happens in Antarctica. And I'm there's no way you would send people up there that aren't. Yeah.
And you can get people out of Antarctica in a few days.
Right. If you had to, you can. Yeah.
Well, and it's the thing is the route back from Mars is measured in a year plus. So no.
Wait a minute. It takes 6 months to get there, but it takes a year plus to get back?
Well, you either wait a year and a half to get a 6 month window to come back.
Oh.
Or you take what's called a Mars cycler orbit, and then it takes a year and a half to get back.
This is the crux of The Martian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's right. I did read that. Yeah. So it's really a one-way trip is in all likelihood. Yeah. Unless you can grow potatoes.
Then we could talk about, we've never built a life support system that lasts us more than a few weeks without external inputs. We're not ready.
I remember Daniel Suarez told me also that or maybe it was Andy Weir actually, that the Martian soil is deadly to humans.
It's got perchlorates in it. They can be removed. When Andy wrote that book, they didn't know there were perchlorates in it. They know now. It's treatable, but yes, it's very dangerous. And it also means no spacesuits inside the hab. That's not a thing.
Are those the perks that are around every dry cleaners in the United States as well?
Your suit will be clean, but you'll be dead.
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
Don't ingest
Like,
that stuff.
No.
The ones that the EPA just literally like 2 weeks ago
Banned.
was finally like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, those are real bad.
You gotta
they're
get rid
not
of it. That's
So that's interesting. When he wrote The Martian, we didn't even know there were perchlorides in the
I hadn't
regolith.
gotten that report back yet.
But we now know there's perchlorides in the regolith. So the regolith, he told me, was so fine that you inhale it, you would die instantly anyway.
Yeah. Well,
But now there's also the issue.
There's nothing to inhale.
There's also the issue of the poison.
yeah, the issue here is that you go out in your spacesuit, then you go into an airlock and take the suit off, and it's on the outside of the suit.
It's on the suit. That's right. You can't get rid of it. Yeah.
So there's a huge set of problems here, and the moon is an excellent place to practice a lot of this, and as well as just learning how well do we function in 1/6 of G. And, is that more sustainable? Because it's a lot easier to build a rotating structure if we don't have to put out whole G.
Is Elon's notion of being an extraplanetary species pie in the sky, as it were? It is. I mean, that's really what he wants, right? That's what he's saying. We need to get off the Earth. We need to be a multiplanetary species.
It's pie in the sky in the sense that it's not something that we can do the way we're like. It's not a short-term solution to what is a very real problem that we should be solving, right? It feels like a cop-out. And I think this, just like going into space initially launched a bunch of new technologies, I don't think it's crazy to test this and put research dollars towards this sort of thing. But I do think it's crazy thinking that Elon Musk is going to have him or his children be on Mars.
His timeline's pretty impractical. But when have we ever expected Elon to have good time?
If it means if he's one of the first, then I assume he's probably not coming back. So make of that what you will.
he wants to live.
He wants to Mars.
Yeah.
He also has a timeline that's insane. Like it's 5 years off or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think to Stacey's point also, I think that these are worthwhile goals, but I think part of the implication sometimes is anyway, that'll solve our problems. And
right.
I think I forget exactly when this was, but I think around the same time, Elon was also, posting stuff on X about how we didn't have to worry about climate change anymore. And that was just going to get taken care of by technology. And so that's bad and not true.
And his whole cadre of TESCREAL believers like Mark Andreessen also believe AI is going to solve all of this. That, technology is going to work us out of all these problems and somehow we'll magically solve everything.
I don't really think they think that.
You don't think they believe it? They're just saying it?
I mean, if they do, they're absolutely not self-aware I feel like they have smarts. So I feel like they must be aware that you cannot burn down everything in the pursuit of something that you hope may save you, right? Which is kind of where we are right now. I feel like they're just we're going to burn down everything because it's going to be great for us right now. And
do you think it's it's a cynical point of view that really we just want to maximize our current wealth, and so we're telling everybody a fairy tale that will be good for us?
Yeah, hi, this is Benito. The thing is that we actually know how to solve this. We just don't want to.
Yeah.
We have the means.
I mean, is it sucky to? Yes, it is completely sucky, but we kind of have to. I mean, you've read Kim Stanley Robinson's really incredibly boring climate change novel where he discusses all the crazy things.
Yes.
Amazing first chapter.
did,
and then the rest of it is a policy proposal.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I as a policy wonk, I was like, this is cool, but this is not really the novel I thought it was going to be.
I should mention Molly White had a really good piece a couple of days ago about Elon Musk's war on Wikipedia. Maybe you saw his tweets. I'm going to call them tweets because I think that's what people think of them as. His X posts on Christmas Eve. Stop donating to Wikipedia, he said. Over the following week, the world's richest man unleashed a barrage of attacks aimed at convincing his 200 million Twitter followers to boycott the Wikimedia Foundation, the nonprofit supporting the volunteer-maintained Wikipedia project. I mean, my opinion, Wikipedia is the greatest thing that the internet has produced. I mean,
would also point out that by saying that, Wikipedia raised a record amount of money.
Good. Good job. Maybe that was
That
his
seems
plan.
to be people's response was, Elon doesn't like it. I should probably support it.
Yeah. I think one of the things Elon's really been pushing is you shouldn't get your news from anybody else other than X. He also said, he retweeted somebody who said Wikimedia blows $50 million on wokeness,
Turned out to be completely false.
which is also a misunderstanding of what's going on. So that hurts my feelings, and it definitely hurts Molly White's feelings because she is a longtime Wikipedia editor, besides being one of the coolest people alive. The creator of Web3 is going just great, which is a wonderful website. She was upset by this, demonstrated that what the information they were quoting was wrong. She writes, Musk's recent Twitter rampage reveals a man with a grudge against Wikipedia looking for anything to support his position regardless of accuracy. What's interesting is back in 2017, Elon tweeted, "I love Wikipedia. It just gets better over time. And happy birthday, Wikipedia, in 2021. So glad you exist." So something happened.
There's like this arc that these people go through.
Starts with
and
a K.
It is basically like, yeah.
K? Special K? Is that
No,
it?
okay. We can't. No, I think it's
a pill.
something hurt his
I think he
feelings and
took
he
a
got
red
mad.
pill.
Yeah.
Whatever's in the red pill, he got it.
Look, all of these, Trump is the same way. Something happened.
Yeah.
The fact that we
Changed his
kind of, I
mind.
don't know what to do. We
Right.
cover it and draw attention to it and validate it, or do we ignore it and just like the way?
Yeah,
you
maybe
ignore
I
your
shouldn't
grandpa?
even mention the tweets because what does it mean, right?
Everyone should donate to Wikipedia.
Yeah, I do. Because I think, as I said, it is one of the greatest creations of the internet, you know?
And I may have donated just recently when a certain billionaire sent out a message.
That is kind of ironic. All right, it's kind of ironic. All right, let's take a little break. We have more to talk about. In fact, the TikTok ban. This is a story that just keeps on giving. We've got the latest on that, and I think we will probably cover it in more detail in a week because the Supreme Court is going to be hearing oral arguments in 5 days. But we'll get to that in just a little bit. Great panel for you. Smart people. Anthony Ha is here from TechCrunch. The wonderful Richard Campbell from .NET Rocks and Run His Radio, and of course Windows Weekly. And our dear friend Stacey Higginbotham, now policy fellow at Consumer Reports. Great to have all three of you for our first show of the year. Nice to kick off there's usually not a lot of news this time of year. Actually, I'm surprised there's so much to talk about. But it's nice to kick off the year with some smart people and a good conversation. So thanks for being here. Our show today brought to you by Delete Me. This is a service we have used. If you've ever searched for your name online, and I don't recommend this, you probably will be aghast at the amount and detail of the personal information that is right there available to the public. It makes you think, whatever happened to privacy? Well, Delete Me is all about getting that stuff off the internet. Turns out it's coming from data brokers. There is unfortunately no law against people collecting every bit of information they can about you and then making it available for sale to the highest bidder. There are literally hundreds of data brokers in the United States doing just this. I just found out, I think somebody proposed we should make it illegal for data brokers to sell your social security number. I said, what? It's not. No, it's completely legal. In fact, when Steve Gibson was talking about the national, National Public Data Breach, big data broker, that included literally hundreds of millions of social security numbers. I searched, Steve searched. Our socials were in their database, and they were selling them. Now, it's more than just a personal concern. It's a family affair. If you've got a family members, Delete Me has a family plan. They have corporate plans as well. We did it because we were starting to get phishing attacks that used information about our employees that was publicly available that made those attacks more credible. If you are a business, you absolutely need to look at protecting your business by making sure at least your management has Delete Me going. That's what we did for Lisa, our CEO. Delete Me reduces risk from identity theft, from those kind of cybersecurity threats, from harassment, and more. And as long as this stuff is legal, you need somebody on your side. Delete Me's experts are on your side. They'll find and remove your information from hundreds of data brokers. If you get the family plan, you can assign a unique data sheet to each family member that's tailored to them, so you can say, what the privacy settings are, because it varies from person to person. But here's the most important thing. Once they remove that data, they don't stop. There's always new data brokers coming online, and the old ones somehow manage to get your dossier starts to build up again. And so Delete Me will continue to scan and remove your information regularly. I mean, everything like addresses, photos, emails, relatives, phone numbers, social media, your net worth, your property value, and on and on and on and on. By the way, when Steve and I searched the national public data breach for our social security numbers, I then searched for Lisa's. Ours were in there. Lisa's weren't. Her data was not in there because she's been using Delete Me. We've used it. It works. I can vouch for it. Protect yourself. Reclaim your privacy. Visit joindeleteme.com/twit. Use the offer code TWIT. You'll get 20% off. Joindeleteme.com/twit. The offer code TWIT. 20% off. Delete Me. I can tell you it works. Delete Me. Joindeleteme.com/twit. We thank him so much for supporting This Week in Tech. Richard, you were funny. You said, I hope we're not going to talk about TikTok today. I don't blame you. It's kind of an endless story. January 19th, 2 weeks from today, TikTok, Congress has said, should either be sold to a U.S. entity or we will shut it down. TikTok, of course, has gone back and forth. They've appealed and so forth. And finally, just before we broke for the holidays, the Supreme Court agreed to review the case. Oral arguments are on the 10th. And presumably they're doing this in a rushed manner so that they can weigh in by the 19th. President Trump has asked, his incoming administration filed a amicus brief asking the Supreme Court to pause the TikTok ban. He says he wants to see a negotiated resolution. We've talked about this for, it feels like years on the show. And it's interesting. Everybody seems to have a different opinion. I admit a conflict of interest because my son's got his, business started on TikTok. It was really valuable to him. But so I like TikTok for that reason. As a creator, Kathy Gellis, who's our expert on law, she's a lawyer and also is admitted to the Supreme Court and files briefs regularly on subjects like this, says it's a First Amendment issue. The government cannot ban TikTok, but there is a history of this. I mean, CFIUS, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S., just told Nippon Steel they could not buy U.S. steel. Mm-hmm. So there is a tradition in this country for our own national security. We can prevent foreign entities from owning companies in the U.S. I don't know what the Supreme Court will do. We will have Kathy on. She might be on next week. She might be on the week after, but she will be, or maybe she's going to be on Twig to discuss the oral arguments because you can't always tell from oral arguments.
Yeah, she's going to be on the Twig the week after the
week after. So a week from Wednesday, she'll be on This Week in Google to talk about the oral arguments. I imagine that President Trump asking the Supreme Court, give me some time, will carry some weight. He has said he was the one, by the way, who said we've got to ban TikTok. They're a national security problem. In the last time he was president, he now says he has a warm spot in his heart, which may have something to do with the fact that Andy Yass, a giant donor to his campaign and the Republican Party in general, has something like a 15% stake in TikTok. That may and Yass met with President-elect Trump shortly before Trump said, "I have a warm spot in my heart."
But Andy Yass also stands to make a lot of money if they sell it to an American.
I would think so, right? Yeah.
It's Jeff Yass, right?
Jeff, not Andy. Sorry. I was thinking of Andy Jassy, the CEO. I confused them. Yes, you're right. Thank you, Jeff Yass. Anthony, where do you come down on this? Does TikTok pose the grave national security threat that the Biden Justice Department says it does?
I mean, I feel like I could imagine that there maybe is some, evidence that that hasn't been released to the public that paints TikTok as a bigger threat than we've seen. I think from like what is available publicly, I feel like it definitely feels a little bit overblown, and feels like TikTok has become sort of like the receptacle for all this kind of general panic about social media and propaganda, and so. It's weird because I feel like the TikTok thing, like you were saying, is people fall differently, and it's not along sort of traditional political lines. And so I think Trump's reasons for opposing the TikTok ban are probably really self-serving, but I also am opposed to the TikTok ban.
Yeah, for other reasons.
Yeah.
If there is evidence that it's a problem, I don't think there's a problem with banning it. I mean, Kathy Gellis argued very strongly a couple of tweets ago that there is a very strong constitutional argument against banning it. It's a First Amendment argument. The people who are on TikTok, American citizens, speech would be, hampered. Although my son has moved to Instagram like everybody else. It's funny, advertising.
The goal is not to ban it. The goal is to get it U.S. owned.
Right.
The ban is just the threat to try and persuade them to do the sale.
But
I think that part of it has been that there was this that has, and that's fair, right? The law is not a ban; it's sort of a sell or ban law. But I think then that's also a way to sort of make it go down easier, because I think that a lot of the politicians supporting it were like, oh no, this isn't a ban. TikTok will continue to be available. It's just going to be under U.S. ownership. But then it's sort of not a lot of discussion of the scenario of ByteDance, whether or not from pressure from the Chinese government, was like, yeah, we're not interested. Bye.
The government, the Chinese government says we won't sell. And furthermore, will forbid TikTok from selling the algorithm, which, I mean, if you don't sell the algorithm, what have you bought? I don't know.
And if we just make U.S. own it, like a U.S. owner owns it, but you don't deal with like the back-end infrastructure and code. And I know they're going to host it there, but if you're using, the code that they use to build the mobile app, are you going to basically recreate TikTok from a US perspective? And I bring this up because I've been somewhat radicalized about the Chinese and the cybersecurity threats and efforts that they have been making to infiltrate like
the Treasury
really deep into like crazy, like the more I'm like, oh man, that is like super nefarious. We don't have anything like
they're in our phone system. Yeah. They just exfiltrated, 300 documents from the Treasury Department.
Yeah. The Beyond Trust. Yeah. So
this is a problem.
Like, yeah. So there is possibly a national security threat here that is valid. We don't have proof of it. We may never get proof of it. I don't really think we got great proof around Huawei, for example, but
it's generally accepted that Huawei's networking gear is a threat.
It is
every country in the West is removing it now.
But as a people, we have not seen proof. Right. Now, there could be actual proof. And like China, we're actually looking right now at, or the U.S. government is looking at TP-Link routers, for example.
Yeah, they just banned those, or thinking about banning those, right?
They've subpoenaed them. And that's an interesting case because actually TP-Link switched their ownership structure and they have U.S. owners. There are brothers who created the company, and they created a U.S. entity to sell gear in the U.S. that is owned by one of the brothers.
Oh, that's
and the
interesting.
Other one's still in China.
They make them in China, but then everything's made in China.
Right.
That's interesting because TP-Link is the number one router brand in the United States by far.
Yeah.
It's the one Wirecutter's been recommending for years.
Yeah. See, our number one pick is that. So I said it, I was like, guys, guess what my next big project for 2025 is, y'all?
What?
Router security.
Oh, good. Good. Is there a way to make a TP-Link router safe?
Well, we don't know if it's unsafe. That's the hard part. Like, yes, there is. You can disconnect it from the internet.
Yeah, but then that's not much of a router, is it? I have a beautiful router that does nothing.
I have a great paperweight.
I read the security analysis paper from the UK group that studied the Huawei gear. And their point was the software was so apparently intentionally convoluted so intentionally complex that they could not be certain that there wasn't telemetry being sent back to China, that there wasn't kill switches in it and so forth. Like they couldn't find them, but they couldn't prove they weren't there either.
Well, and there's also the threat that a firmware update could suddenly introduce those kinds of flaws.
We don't know if there are backdoors. And the other thing is China was caught trying to build backdoor, like participating in the 3GPP standards group to build a backdoor into.
Great.
I think it was 5G.
At least they went through a standards body. I'm just happy to hear that.
I mean, so like there is definitely, and like China is also doing its darndest to, like, they have, is it Blue Star? Is that what it's called? It's Star Field. They've got their own version of Bluetooth that they're pushing, for example. So if you think about what's happening there in like the separation of the tech stacks between
Starflash.
What's it called?
Starflash.
Sorry. I was like, that's a very spooky thing spooky in the traditional like quantum sense. Like you just don't know. Isn't it? Like, but by the time we know, we're probably going to be hosed. So that's how I feel.
So you got this problem here where we have plenty of evidence that they've tried this in a lot of other places. And now we're looking at the position of a bunch of other products and going, what are the consequences that this is happening here?
And the consequences are bad.
Significant. Yeah.
Now, and interestingly, the way the Chinese state-sponsored hackers breached the Treasury Department was they went through a security tool the Treasury Department used for its own security. So they didn't actually breach the Treasury Department. They did, but they did it using something called Beyond Trust.
Yeah, this is effectively a supply chain hack. Go after one of the vendors that really should have been more robust than this. And then
they had a remote support product, and Beyond Trust said a limited number of customers were involved. It just happens one of them was the United States Treasury Department.
That's
the point, though, is it doesn't have to be a first party attack. It could be a supply chain attack.
Well, in TikTok's interesting because you have so many people using it. So if you know that like the daughter of the US president, is on TikTok, Ella, what's her name? Like you can start determining things about like where people are in space. Where do they go just by having this app on their phone?
But then the reasonable thing would be, and the government has to some degree done this, ban these apps on phones of government officials and military and so forth, right? I mean,
everybody's running their own servers and has their own phones because they don't. Are you going to tell your teenage kid not to have a phone running?
Yeah, if you're the vice president of the United States,
that's going to go over.
You're gonna, sorry, kid.
Canadian government mobile devices are not allowed to run TikTok, so they've
right. I would think that's a reasonable precaution and legal. No issue of challenging there.
Do you do it to all the staff? Do you do it? I mean,
How far do you go down?
How far do you go down this chain? Because
isn't this generally a problem with business in general? Is BYOD, right? Is you start to be a problem because you can't control your employees bringing in their laptops and phones.
Yeah, BYD is sort of fallen by the wayside for exactly that problem. It's like it was so difficult to make BYD mobile devices work with business safely and appropriately that it became cheaper to just give them a phone.
The iPhone was the original sin. The Apple. It was the apple in the garden.
Oh my God. But who was the serpent? President Xi.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm sorry. He's Winnie the Pooh. Oh, now we just got banned in China. I'm sorry.
Well done.
Oh, Lisa, I apologize. Anyway, this is a hard one, isn't it? Because we don't have the information. And unfortunately, the level of trust people have now with their government has kind of gone close to zero. So, if a senator comes out and says, well, I've seen the paperwork and TikTok is a nightmare, nobody credits it.
And it's also hard because we haven't divorced the legitimate security concerns from just straight up racism. So it's very hard to talk about this.
Or xenophobia. Yeah.
Without like appealing to the basest jingoistic impulses of people. And that's awful. Like,
right. My feeling is that I think there's a lot of legitimate concerns, and also a lot of the people who are most enthusiastic about the ban are doing it in bad faith reasons, whether that's because they're racist or because they think it'll be good for their business, or some combination of the two.
It sure benefits Mark Zuckerberg's business if TikTok gets banned. Instagram gets it all, right?
Which is one of the things that Trump brings up.
And he doesn't like Mark Zuckerberg currently.
Although Mark Zuckerberg is doing everything he can to convince Trump that he likes him.
He's giving him money. He's changed.
Just give him
Nick
money.
Clegg
He'll be
has now
fine.
been replaced.
He'll have a warm
affairs.
spot in a minute. It'll be easy.
It is pretty easy.
He just may pay a little bit more than the other people.
I need to put a chart up of tech executives, who's in and who's out. We need a whole.
I think there's only in and unknown.
Yeah.
State of California has, or a judge in the state of California has blocked the law that protects kids from social media. It was supposed to take effect on Wednesday. Federal judge Tuesday said you cannot enforce the Protecting Our Kids from Social Media Addiction Act, or POXMA, finding it infringes what? First Amendment rights for tech companies. However, it wasn't a complete win for the tech companies. One of the things that was in there was a requirement that kids not be able to use social media between midnight and 6 a.m. and during school hours between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. That actually violated First Amendment. So he said, you cannot prohibit companies from sending push notifications to minors' phones during those hours. No. However, and you can't say how many minors are on the platforms. You can't demand that. However, he did reject the request for an injunction of provisions for parental controls and restrictions on personalized feeds. Actually, I agree with him, right? I think it's appropriate to say to Instagram, for instance, you have to provide parental controls. And I'm not sure about restrictions on personalized feeds. That's a little
Parental controls come into play as being a problem for kids who are in households where their parents don't like, if you're like LGBTQIA and your parents are not.
Yeah, but what are you going to do? I mean, we have a long history of parents getting to choose what happens to their kids. Admittedly, that's problematic, but.
What are you saying our laws in efforts to do this sort of thing are maybe inconsistent?
The judge recognized the need to protect children from the effects of social media, which I'm not sure I agree with, but he found that the law was not properly tailored because it wasn't inclusive enough of different notification types. So it really is kind of a technicality. So we'll watch.
It almost feels like a punt. Just sort of kicked it back.
Yeah,
work on this some more, and we'll try again.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, it seemed like, and you mentioned the algorithmic thing, and that seems to be like the one thing that is sort of sliding through, and that it seems like people are focusing on that. Well, you can try to, stop that from happening, and on some level, maybe that, I mean, not a lawyer, that's like, it seems like the judge was okay with that, but is that just sort of a proxy for like, is that really going to fix anything? I think was sort of the subtext of the way you said it, Leo, which I do think, a lot of the algorithmic stuff is pretty harmful, but obviously is not going to solve all these problems in as much as they need to be solved.
I think I've changed my tune on this. I was one of the people who said, oh, the problem is algorithms, whether it's YouTube's recommendation algorithm or the algorithmic feed on, Instagram, that the algorithm is the problem. But the problem really is, you have to have some algorithms. A purely chronological feed or no recommendations at all is not. Nobody wants that. When people are given a choice between an algorithmic feed and a chronological feed, they almost always choose the algorithmic feed in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, Blue Sky is sort of testing out whether or not, you can, how big you can get and to what extent people will stick to chronological if you emphasize that.
But there's Jeff Jarvis's contention is there's always an algorithm. So it's kind of hard. You're slicing it.
I mean, there's always an editor.
Right. There's an algorithm in the New York Times. Are you saying the New York Times should just put all the stories on the front page? No.
I think there is, and we haven't figured out how to do this or even how to talk about it because we hate nuance. But understanding, like, I have a pretty good sense of how the New York Times picks its stories. And for example, their editing, I have a pretty good sense.
Well, and they're a publication, so they're publishing their own stories. So
and they're publishing it for everybody, right? We all, so like, it is deeply harmful to have.
You don't see something different than your kid. That's a good point. Yeah.
A very private, heavily focused algorithm that is designed to maximize, to benefit a company, right? So maybe it's maximizing engagement. Maybe it's designed to make you want to buy things. Like you can think about. So those are probably the factors. One, that it's highly personalized and no one else can test and see what's happening, right? So you don't know that someone's behaving poorly, right? You don't know if the algorithm is grooming someone or whatever. And that it's designed, like the New York Times, yes, they want to make money, but they still have this like goal to inform people. They have this like weird journalistic ethos they're still living with.
Well, maybe I made a mistake. I shouldn't have said the New York Times. Let's say Taboola. Or
I think it's a nice example in the sense that like that is
we don't hate algorithms, I think is what I'm kind of saying.
We want
curation. We want some curation.
I think we'd like human curation though too. Like that's something that we've lost a lot.
A human programs the algorithms. It's all human curation.
Yeah, but human programs the algorithm for a purpose.
Yeah, the purpose. Like think about reinforcement learning for learning how to play Go, for example. If you're instead of learning how to play Go, you're designing for engagement or profits, right? If that's your reinforcement mechanism, then you don't care what you're sending the kids or adults.
Well, you do care. It's just you're sending what they need to make the most money.
Right.
You're not cared about the consequences of what actually happens to those people.
And
that's capitalism. We're a capitalist society, isn't?
Yeah,
the algorithm for capitalism is make the most money.
We also don't allow you to put formaldehyde in milk just because it preserves it. Right?
There's lots of laws about how we advertise to children, right?
Mm-hmm. That's true too.
They're much less effective, but yes, they are being gutted. And I do think there is definitely a problem. Like kids see some really upsetting stuff, and you see these stories, and I'm like, I would like there not to be dead kids as a result of being
of course
shown certain types of content, right? I don't care how much money Facebook makes off. So this is
hard. I agree. Yeah.
But I don't even think we're talking about it in the right way yet. That's what's challenging. We're not figuring out how to think about it yet.
Well, and experts in child development, like Candace Odgers, have said we're focusing on the wrong thing, and by doing so, we're going to ignore the things that can make a difference. It's often the case, right, with legislatures that they pick something that's easy and popular that doesn't fix it, but everybody's happy. And by doing so, they really make the problem worse because they funnel all the attention and money into the wrong thing.
I think a lot of them try to do. I become a little less cynical about that. I think there's a lot of effort to do the right thing. I think there's a lot of money going towards scare tactics like stifling innovation and things like that. That even the basic populace thinks like. Again, I don't think we're talking, and I don't think the media is serving people correctly. Anyway, if I were writing a book, I would spend my next 10 years thinking about and writing this book because I think it's
what would it be? What would what the media should be doing, or what do you want to?
It's not just the media. It's like how we understand what technology is doing to our society, what we want as a society, right? And then how to frame that issue so we can actually effectively regulate around it. And right now, there's so much money going into stopping that from happening that, yeah.
Money from the
it'd be a
big
great
tech.
book.
Money from big tech that doesn't want to be regulated at all.
They don't want to be regulated, but it's not just big tech. It's also like private equity firms. There's a lot of money in keeping things
right
the way they are.
The firearms industry, you know?
Yeah.
It turned out,
well, oil and gas industry, right? I mean,
we made this business where people didn't have to pay for internet services by collecting their information. It turned out we could make a ton of money from collecting and using that information.
yeah, we kind of blew it, didn't we?
Yeah.
I wish, honestly,
well, it's also
that
like,
we had,
who's the we making all the ton of money?
not us.
Yeah, just
But-
tech giants.
Yeah, it's probably the case that if we'd really thought about it, we might have designed the internet differently. I asked Tim Berners-Lee once, it was Vint Cerf once, what he would have done differently when he created TCP/IP. He said, I would have built encryption in, but we didn't know.
Yeah, didn't need it. It was
Didn't
just,
need it then.
just
Just
group of
universities.
scientists. What could
Yeah,
go
a
wrong?
bunch of scientists talking to each other. That's the problem. And, it's a little hard to, after the fact, as we've learned with encryption, to add it.
Yeah, the counter argument, but if you had put it in the beginning, you probably wouldn't have succeeded because it would have been too complicated to use and it wouldn't have gotten the wide adoption. Because it was simple to use, it got the wide adoption, and now you have the problem.
If everybody who used email was forced to use PGP, there would be no email.
Yeah, you don't
I'd be okay
get
with
to
that
that
now.
critical mass part. Right?
Yeah. All right, let's take a little break. More to come. You're watching the first show of the new year. We're so glad you're here. And I hope you had a good holiday and a good break. I have to say, 2 weeks without doing shows. At first, I thought this is great, and then I kind of missed it. So I'm glad to be back. I hope you're glad to have us back here. Our show today, we have a great panel, and I'm really thrilled to have him. Anthony Hoff from TechCrunch, from Consumer Reports, Stacey Higginbotham, and our very own Mr. Know-It-All, Richard Campbell. I just watched the 39 Steps, Richard. And the plot of it is there's a guy who memorizes 50 facts every day. And you can ask him any question and he will answer the question. And so the spies used him to memorize the secret plans. You don't know any secret plans, probably. So
If I did, would I tell you?
only if I asked the right question. Our show today brought to you by Thinkst Canary. We talk about security a lot. And the focus often with security is perimeter defense, right? If you can keep the bad guys out of your network, everything's going to be fine. Unfortunately, just ask the Treasury Department. It's hard to keep the bad guys out of your network. And there's a real problem because if you assume that your perimeter defenses are perfect, you never check to see if there are bad guys in the network. On average, companies don't know they've had a breach for 91 days. And those 91 days are critical. That's 3 months that hackers can wander your system, look at things, exfiltrate data. They can do anything they want. The Thinkst Canary is the solution to this problem. It's a honeypot. But it's not a complicated honeypot. It's a honeypot you can deploy in minutes. You can make it be anything you want, whether it's a Windows server, a Linux box. Mine's a Synology NAS, an SSH server. But here's the thing. If somebody is inside your network, whether it's a malicious insider or a hacker, and they see these, they don't look vulnerable. They look valuable. They go, oh, I want to get into that. You can also, with your Thinkst Canary, not just the hardware honeypot itself, which is about the size of a USB, external USB drive, plugs into the wall and into the Ethernet, and that's it. And then you use your console to choose hundreds of different profiles. You can also use it to create files that look like PDFs or Excel spreadsheets or text files or whatever you want. And you can give them provocative names like employeeinformation.xls. But the minute somebody tries to open those lure files or tries to brute force your fake internal SSH server, your Thinkst Canary is going to send you a notification. They will tell you immediately you have a problem. No false alerts, just the alerts that matter. And you can get it any way you want. Email, text, syslog. They support webhooks. They have an API. So, any way you want to get those notifications, any or all. But when you get a notification, you know. In fact, we've had this Thinks Canary for years, and only once did we get a notification, and it was somebody had put a USB drive on the network that was going out and probing all of the devices on the network. Whew. I mean, I got the notification that said somebody at 10 dot whatever is probing your network. We tracked it down pretty darn quick and took it off. That's awesome. Choose a profile for your Thinks Canary device, register it with the hosted console for monitoring and notifications, and then just sit back and relax. Attackers who breach your network are malicious insiders. Other adversaries, they'll make themselves known the minute they access your Thinks Canary or the lore files. It's a great product and a must-have to defend you again. You know, perimeter's not enough. You need to have something inside that's keeping an eye out. And it's well named, right? It's like the canary in the coal mine. Visit canary.tools/twit. Let's say you want 5 Thinks Canaries. $7,500 a year, that's all. You get your own hosted console, all the upgrades, the support, the maintenance. And in fact, I'm going to get you an even better deal. If you use the code TWIT in the How Did You Hear About Us box, 10% off the price forever, for as long as you use Thinks Canaries, 10% off. And if you're at all like, well, I don't know, get it, do it, because they have an amazing 2-month money-back guarantee for a full refund. So order the Thinks Canary, install it, and you still have 60 days to think it over, right? I have to tell you, though, during all the years, more than 7 years now, we've partnered with Thinks Canary. This is our 8th year with Thinks Canary. Their refund guarantee has not yet ever been claimed. I ask them every month. They say, anybody want a refund? Nope, not yet. Because it works. And once you get one, you realize, we've needed this all this time. Visit canary.tools/twit. Enter the code TWIT in the How Did You Hear About Us box. You get 10% off for life. The Thinks Canary. Love this thing. Canary.tools/twit. The offer code is TWIT. Thank them for their support when you talk to them. Haroon and company are great people. On we go with the show. The Russian Shadow Fleet oil tanker. This is another case of undersea cables being cut. This time, Finland seized this Shadow Fleet oil tanker. It was like previously, it was dragging its anchor, and it cut the Estlink 2 subsea electricity cable. So it wasn't internet, it was electricity in the Gulf of Finland. Tanker's registered in the Cook Islands, but carries oil from Russia to Egypt. Finland said they believe the vessel's anchor, which they did not find on the ship, was cutting the cables. This is not the first time this has happened.
Not even the first time in that area.
That's right. Weren't 2 undersea cables cut by a Chinese container ship connecting Finland and Estonia?
Right. The Swedes boarded that one, and then the Chinese showed up, and pretty quickly after that, they were back on their way again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this
last year, a Chinese container ship cut a gas pipeline between Finland and Estonia. This is a new form of warfare in a way, isn't it? Infrastructure warfare.
Absolutely.
So you made a good point. This tanker is full of oil.
It is. And it's a poorly maintained ship, right? These are ships that are not running in the public register. They don't have AIS indicators, or they turn them off. There's been 4 of them have broken up and sunk in the Black Sea recently.
Oh, dear.
So there's a bit of oil spills going on in the Black Sea. This is all a side effect of the war and Russia being outside of normal trade chains. So they have to keep their stuff secret. And so these ships are not good ships. And you don't lose an anchor. That's weird. That's a lot of money. It's an expensive thing to lose. So it definitely seems like.
And you're also seeing it with GPS, like the fact that they're turning off the GPS trackers.
Yeah.
It's making and jamming them. Yes. It's making global trade just dangerous.
These, that's right. Because if you're a ship and you're using GPS and suddenly you don't know where the hell you are, that's problematic.
It's a nice reminder that we depend a lot on laws. It's kind of like every time I drive on our streets, I'm like, I'm really just relying on the people around me to behave the way I expect them to behave. And for a long time we have, but it feels like that is less true. perhaps now.
And we talk about this on Twig. And I'm sorry you're not on Twig anymore. We loved having you, but we talk about this a lot. It's not just laws; it's norms. Because not everything is regulated by a law, but there are norms of behavior that we just expect as civil society that we're going to, behave.
And there's an
yet
awful lot
no
of
one
ports.
still puts on their headphones when they're in public.
Yeah. There
Well,
are a
it's
lot of
gotten
ports
worse.
that won't allow these ships in, right? Like,
Yeah.
The reason that you get a place like Egypt where they're getting a bargain on that oil, and so they'll tolerate these shadow ships. If they couldn't land anywhere, they wouldn't be around. But the shadow fleet's grown immensely since the Ukraine war started.
Well, isn't there the Chinese shadow fleet isn't just destroying like internet and electricity cables. It's also like delivering like the majority of like calamari to the US, isn't it?
Yeah, the dark fishing fleet.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Slow down. Hold on. What? Calamari? You mean squid?
Yeah.
Yep.
There's unregulated fishing being done extensively. It's not even just the Chinese. The Canadians were up in arms about ships in the restricted cod zones. Like there's a lot of malfeasance going on in marine these days because there's far less enforcement than there used to be. There used to be a time where if you didn't have a registered ship, like you would be boarded by a Coast Guard,
right?
And bad things would happen. Like the Finns are doing the right thing. They're holding the ship, which means it's not going to deliver oil. And time is money in these scenarios.
And of course, the other side effect of this is Estonia has to make up for the electricity it's not getting from Finland now by buying it from Russia.
Well, probably Belarus, but yes.
That's close enough. Close enough. But I want to know more about calamari. Should I not be eating calamari, Stacey? Is this unregulated calamari or is this black market calamari? What are we talking here?
Oh, it's calamari from it's calamari that you find in legit places.
So I love fried calamari. Should I stop eating this? I stopped eating octopus because I found out they're smart.
Oh yeah, I had to stop eating octopus.
Yeah, I felt bad after my octopus friend. Thought I'm not going to eat that anymore.
Let me find you a definitive article that will help you, because
Time did a big piece on it a couple of years ago.
So it's calamari. It's harvesting calamari in areas that are protected or over harvesting it.
They're over harvesting or doing it but you're right. I mean, other countries do this too. They were shining a light on Chinese ships.
Okay.
Probably well, they have by far the biggest fleet. It's like 500 ships. It's massive.
Yeah,
it's a fishing fleet.
Fishing fleet, yeah, and factory ships. Like they're not just catching the calamari; they're cleaning and processing and flash freezing them into packages that look like any other package, and then mixing them with the regular supply.
The New Yorker had an article: the squid fleet. Wow. This is a focus on. It's a film. Oh, that's an article about a film.
Here's an article from Taste: Calamari in Crisis. Calamari. Apparently, the calamari fishery in Rhode Island is in deep trouble. I know we don't get Dungeness crab anymore at Christmas time in California because it's been overfished, and they're trying to build.
Oh well, that's a climate change thing.
Is it?
Like,
yeah, because you can get plenty of it in Oregon. It's just you can't get it down here.
As well as overfishing too.
Yeah, there's overfishing, but we also the water got real warm with all the heat waves up here, and it makes it hard for them to breed. We're about to lose all of our apples too.
Now that I could live without calamari, but I can't live without
your cosmic
apples.
Crisps. They're in danger, man.
Man, I got to have apple pie. You may remember that there's been a battle over the last couple of administrations over net neutrality. Under Trump, I believe the FCC decided that internet service providers could not be regulated.
It was a law passed by Congress.
Congress
actually, in one of their budget acts, did I think it was the Restoring Internet Freedom Act, or
the idea is that an internet service provider should be agnostic about the kind of traffic it's carrying and shouldn't favor Netflix, let's say, because Netflix gives it money, over Amazon Prime because Amazon doesn't give it money, and so that net content
and
on the internet
Comcast
should be
shouldn't
neutral.
favor NBCU, which it
Right.
still owns.
Right, they own it. Right. So it's been kind of back and forth. The Biden administration made restoring internet neutrality a priority. In 2021, he signed an executive order encouraging the FCC to reinstate the rules. They did, but the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, the Sixth Circuit, has said the FCC doesn't have the authority to do so. Obama implemented it in 2015. Trump repealed it in 2017. Biden brought it back, but the court says that it's up to Congress to decide this.
Yeah, it was the Lopez. Is it
Loper
Lopez?
Bright.
Loper Bright. That's, I was like,
Yeah.
not Lopez. Sorry, Loper Bright is what they cited.
This is the deference to government agencies. This
Right.
is like, yeah,
This is the
Chevron.
reversing of the Chevron.
it's like
decision.
Chevron deference. Yeah,
Is what people tend
Yeah.
to know it as.
yeah.
Yeah, it was a pretty brutal opinion.
Well, and Loper Bright's going to come down like Citizens United. This is one of the underminings of the mechanisms that have allowed experts to help protect us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that there are people who think that government bureaucracies overregulate or overreach. But as we've learned, first of all, Congress doesn't have the bandwidth to regulate everything that needs to be regulated. And secondly, they often don't have the expertise. And
Well, and they're
and the courts are even
hawked to
worse,
so many-
frankly. And so, yeah, this is bad news. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was just going to say Congress can't do anything because they're so stuck with all of their donors. But
Yeah.
Election
Yeah,
every
this
2
is-
years.
But let me ask this question because, you know, I remember under the Obama FCC, they introduced this concept of net neutrality by defining internet service providers as telecommunications providers.
So
they were
this is
regulated by
actually,
title.
it goes all the way back to 1995, and not Michael Powell, who it's not Colin Powell. He was the general.
Colin Powell's son, Michael Powell. No, it was
Michael
his son.
Powell.
Yeah.
So this was actually Bush's original FCC. They were like, hey, he created the first principles of net neutrality. This was actually done under a Republican FCC.
Well, and it wasn't an issue until 1995. I mean, but as soon as you started seeing, for instance, zero rating, where your phone company says, we're not going to charge you for Netflix.
It became an issue in like 1996, 97. And that was a big deal because we saw the telecoms suddenly realize that the services running over their pipes were going to make a lot of money. So you had Ed Whitaker, who at the time was the CEO of AT&T, SBC. I think it was SBC, as he was the CEO before it merged. And he was like, look, we're not going to have dumb pipes. Everybody's going to pay us. You're going to pay us, and the content company.
They want to get it both ways. That's right. They want Netflix to give them money and us to get to
because
Netflix.
they were like,
we're the
we
gatekeeper.
own this infrastructure. I mean, he knew he was a monopoly.
Right.
Basically. And so then it started becoming an issue, especially, and it became an issue with Skype originally. And it was because a tiny little ISP in like Madison, Wisconsin was like, we're blocking Skype. We offer
remember
telephone
that.
service.
That's right.
Yes. And so suddenly the FCC was like, what? No, you can't block all these cool money-making internet services like Skype. And then it became a thing. And it became a thing. It just became more and more of a thing as more and more services started competing with like over-the-top television when it became like a real big thing. And that was back in like 2010? Yeah. Sorry, I've covered this for 15 years.
I know this is an ongoing, but here's my question. And I'm a big supporter of net neutrality. I have been, really outspoken I think this is obviously,
Your
at least
business
abstractly,
depends on
the right thing. But at the same time, once those were repealed in 2017, did we see suddenly all sorts of negative impacts of not having those rules? It's been
Have
7
we
years
seen-
without net neutrality.
Okay.
Has it been a problem?
I don't know. One, there have been states that have repealed it. Two, I think a lot of companies have been on the better behavior. Also, there are consent decrees in place. There were consent decrees in place governing.
So maybe we
like,
don't need the FCC
Comcast
to regulate
do we?
this.
I would argue that now that it is definitively up to Congress, we probably will soon see things. And we're probably going to see it first at zero rating. So what you're going to see is like what Timo tried to do with Spotify.
Right.
And people love zero rating because it gives them stuff for free.
Right. Consumers think it's great. They don't understand that what it does is it means Spotify's the winner because they're
nothing new will come up.
Nothing new will ever
unless they
come
can
up.
pay AT&T.
Right. Well,
And it's
that's
a
the
hard
current
argument,
state.
but that's what I would look for.
It is conceivable. This is the story from Reuters. The Trump administration is unlikely to appeal the decision, but net neutrality advocates, which, by the way, include Amazon, Apple, Alphabet, and Meta, could seek review by the Supreme Court. The problem is this is the same Supreme Court that threw out Chevron deference. So, I mean, it seems pretty clear. In fact, the Sixth Circuit said this is because of the Loper-Bright decision. The FCC doesn't have that authority. Only Congress has that authority. The Supreme Court said so. So I can't imagine a Supreme Court appeal will have any positive impact on this.
Yeah.
But Stacey, you were saying that there are specific states that do have net neutrality protections in place. Is that right?
Yes, Washington State has a net
Where you
neutrality.
live.
Yeah, let me see what I want to say. There are like 10
Pretty
states.
sure California does.
Yeah,
That's what I was wondering. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if big states like California and Washington have those rules, that in some way protects us because even if you live in New Jersey, AT&T is not going to do something to New Jersey that it can't do in California, or no?
California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, New York, Maine,
Oh, nice.
all have enacted net neutrality legislation. Montana's governor did issue a net neutrality executive order, as did, I don't know if that's Vermont or New Hampshire. It's Vermont. Sorry. I was like, I'm looking at an unlabeled map of New England. I'm like,
It's the one on the left. Okay, good.
yeah, it's the one next to New York. And Rhode Island.
I'm impressed
and
that you
Hawaii.
were able to do that without labels on the states. You did very well.
It still comes down to enforcement, right? Like the upside to a federal law is then you have federal enforcement that covers the whole area.
Yeah, it's
Now
very
it's gonna be a
difficult to do it
state-by-state
state by
thing.
state. Yeah.
And violations of net neutrality are difficult to detect. It's easy if they're marketing a zero rate, but there's lots of more insidious things that are harder to measure.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
look at peering. I have to, like, if I wanted to, when I was writing those stories about like peering issues, and
Hard to
peering
explain, isn't it? Yeah.
It's hard to explain, and that's only sort of tangentially. It's like their way around net neutrality was what peering was. But I had to run like trace routes on all of my.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of work.
Fortunately, the big tech companies are the ones who want net neutrality because they want a pipeline to you as a customer. And
They
they
may
don't
not
want
in the
these
long term.
gatekeepers to get in the way. Oh, maybe not in the long term.
I think they
because
just
are-
they don't want to fight in
Instagram,
another
you can pay.
They just don't want another fight with each other in another like place. You know, like they're already fighting each other in so many places. They don't want another one.
Benito, you've talked about net neutrality before because you grew up in the Philippines where there were no net neutrality rules.
Yes, there's no net neutrality there. So, you know, when you get your phone plan, it comes with like unlimited access to Facebook because, you know, it doesn't count against your data,
free.
stuff like that,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
What is the impact of that?
Well, for one thing is like the internet in the Philippines to a lot of people is just Facebook.
It's
You know,
Facebook.
that's one of the.
And I'm sure WhatsApp has a leg up on any other messaging platform.
That's not true, actually. Actually, in the Philippines, it's Viber for some weird reason.
Viber.
Yeah, it's a Rakuten.
I didn't even know they were still around.
Property, yeah.
Wow. Maybe Viber has some deals with
Possibly, yeah.
How many? There are a lot of carriers in the Philippines, I think. Yes.
There's 2 majors and then some smaller ones.
Okay. Let's take a little break. A few more stories, including the words that Lake Superior State University say should never be uttered in 2025. But first, a word from Zscaler. Zscaler is the leader in cloud security. You know, enterprises spend a lot of money on firewalls, on VPNs, and that's really done nothing. Breaches continue to rise by 18% year over year in ransomware attacks, a $75 million record payout last year in ransomware attacks. So I think we maybe need something a little bit better. The problem with the perimeter defenses and VPNs, the traditional security tools, in a way, they expand your attack surface with public-facing IPs that can be exploited by bad actors more easily than ever now with AI tools. And they struggle to inspect the encrypted traffic at scale, allowing compromise. VPNs and firewalls also enable lateral movement. This is what we were talking about earlier. Once somebody's in the network, once you connect users to the network, they can go all over. And that allows data loss via encrypted traffic that you can't see and other leakage paths. Hackers exploit traditional security infrastructure using AI to outpace your defenses. Look, I think it's pretty clear. Now's the time to rethink your security and not let the bad guys win. They're innovating. They're exploiting your defenses. What can you do? Zscaler Zero Trust plus AI stops attackers by hiding your attack surface, making your apps, your IP addresses invisible. They don't even know where to start. It also eliminates lateral movement because even if a user's in the network, they can only connect to the apps you say, not the entire network. Continuously verifying every request based on identity and context, simplifying security management with AI-powered automation, and detecting threats using AI to analyze over 500 billion daily transactions. Look, it's very simple. Hackers can't attack what they can't see. Protect your organization with Zscaler, Zero Trust plus AI. Learn more at zscaler.com/security. That's ZSCALER, Zscaler. I do the Z for our Canadian friends. Zscaler or zscaler.com/security. Protect against AI cyber attacks. Zero Trust is such a good way to do this. Zscaler. Very interesting study in Harper's Magazine. It's, I think, an excerpt from a book Liz Pelly is about to publish about Spotify. And I don't use Spotify, so you tell me if this matches. If you ask your experience, if you ask for a type of music, not I want to hear music from the Rolling Stones, but you say, I want to hear some focus music or relaxing music. Much of the stuff you'll get in the playlist is phony musicians, cheap fake artists, Pelly writes, offerings created by Spotify. Now, Spotify told the music press the reports were, quote, categorically untrue, full stop. The company is not creating its own fake artist tracks, but it did stop short of saying it's adding these to the playlists, and you can see it for yourself. Articles about this from NPR and The Guardian started to stir up some interests. Journalists scrutinized the music of some of the artists they suspected to be fake. Before the year was out, a music writer named David Turner used analytics data to illustrate how Spotify's ambient chill playlist had largely been wiped of known artists like Brian Eno and Bibio and John Hopkins. Music replaced by tracks from something called Epidemic Sound, a Swedish company that offers production music, subscription-based production music, the stock music you'd hear in the backgrounds of advertisements or TV shows and so forth. Of course, why would Spotify do this? So they don't have to pay royalties to the record companies, like Brian Eno's record company. This is a story that's been kind of brewing for some time and is now really becoming more and more of a story. I don't use Spotify. Anthony, are you a Spotify? You look like a Spotify user.
I don't know what that means, but
I don't know
I
either.
am a Spotify user.
I knew it. See, I could.
It's every year I've sort of like feel more grudging about the fact that I still use Spotify.
Have you noticed that these kind of ambient sound playlists are filled with weird stuff?
I remember reading about this when there were some other reports, I don't know
Yes.
exactly when it was, but there have been other reports in the last few years. And I think at first I was like, who even uses Spotify in this way? But then I did notice like over Christmas, like I don't have like Christmas albums saved in Spotify. So you just type in Christmas music and then try to find something. In that case, you're not looking for like totally generic, chum,
Exactly.
but you do like, probably which cover of Winter Wonderland you're listening to. You don't necessarily care too much about.
This is Pelly writes, according to a source close to the company, this is in Harper's Magazine, Spotify's own internal research showed many users don't come to the platform to listen to specific artists or albums. They're looking for a soundtrack. They're looking for wallpaper, a study playlist, a dinner vibes, right? And as a result, the thinking seemed to be, she writes, why pay full price royalties if users are only half listening?
Not even half. It's background music.
Yeah, it's wallpaper.
I mean, it's not like Spotify's paying artists that much money as it is.
Hey, anything, they're very, very profitable.
they
created something called the
Their
perfect.
first time profitable, like this year, weren't they?
The CEO of Spotify has made more money than any musician ever. Think about that.
Well, yeah, Daniel Ek has definitely, but that's not cash money. That's the value of the stock, and like it could.
Well, that's the problem for Spotify is they're always hanging by a thread because the music industry could cut that thread. So they've always looked at ways to get beyond the big three record companies, right? And this is one of the ways. They call it the Perfect Fit Content Program. They started this in 2017, according to Liz Pelly, as one of the company's new bets to achieve profitability. She talked to former employees who said, yeah, this is what we did. Editors were soon encouraged by higher-ups with increasing persistence to add PFC content to certain playlists. So there was, in fact, according to this story in Harper's, an increasing pressure to start putting this stuff in there. Spotify denies the staffers were encouraged to add PFC to playlists and that playlist editors were discontented with the program. By 2023, several hundred playlists were being monitored by the team responsible for PFC, 150 of those including ambient relaxation, deep focus, 100% lounge, bossa nova dinner, cocktail jazz, deep sleep, morning stretch, and detox were nearly entirely made up of PFC, these phony tracks.
It's the jazz that really pisses me off about this because there's so much good jazz out there. There's already so much of that.
Right.
Like you don't need the slop. You don't need the AI slop.
Ask for it by name, though, I think not genre, right? That's probably one way to avoid this.
You get, when you search for, like if I search for the blues, for example, the first row I get is like actual blues music. It's like playlists that are blues standards, blues classics, and they're real. And then there's a modern blues. And if you look in there, those are actual blues artists.
Right.
But then you get moods and moments.
Yeah, there you go.
Those are like, I look through some of those and I'm like, no, some of these people may be actual artists that I don't recognize. So I would have to go through and scan them individually, but there are some that look suspicious. But
if nobody complains, they're going to keep doing it.
Yeah. And I think people like my child's favorite genre of music is like lo-fi hip hop beats, according to, and all of that is just,
and they don't care who made them, right?
It's slop.
It's wallpaper.
That and Tchaikovsky. So there is a large.
Well, that's not wallpaper. That's good stuff.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, but what I'm saying is for my child, those are equivalent because they're just background noise.
Right.
And I kind of, I think they should probably be transparent. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. Should we be transparent about it?
They, Daniel Eck in a 2023 conference call noted the boom in AI generated content could be, quote, great culturally and allow Spotify to, quote, grow engagement and revenue.
Well, yeah, and I think it's worth underlining that it's not just these artists, right? Is that there's AI content is sort of like spreading throughout Spotify. I mean, beyond Spotify too, but certainly within Spotify, like all of the, like one thing I have noticed is all these like genre and time period playlists that I used to listen to, and they used to be sort of just the standard Spotify playlist. Now they like really are touting, oh, this is like personalized for you. And then, you know, the whole like year in review, which Spotify Wrapped last year had a lot of like,
I think that's cool. Everybody's
it's a cool idea. Right, but then what happened, I guess, was I didn't even bother listening to it because it just sounded so horrible. Like, they did an AI generated podcast of people discussing your favorite
that's terrible.
songs, and people were just like, "This sucks."
That's probably that Notebook LM stuff.
Yeah, and it sounds just like me, which doesn't make me any happier either.
Yeah, I got an email that somebody said it sounds just like me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just generic podcaster sound.
You know, Anthony's hinting at the future. The future is you will have a mood bot that simply plays music of whatever mood you want by generating it on the fly from a generative AI data set.
I mean, the only people who are harmed by this are actual performing artists. Spotify.
No, I think we're
every human who doesn't get to listen to actually human generated music.
Yeah, like I mean, if I used to hate Brian Eno, right? But I flipped a switch when I turned like 35 or something. And all of a sudden I was like, Music for Airports is my jam.
That's isn't that a great album? I love it.
Mode like, on.
Yeah. So, oh, sorry.
Brian's calling.
Right. Yeah. He's like, thanks, Stacey. But like, I otherwise would have never have gotten that. And if I got like some sort of AI generated slop, it's unclear.
You can't love that artist because it doesn't exist. So. It's just
right. And if you don't have and if you just have more and more AI slop making the music industry more and more unsustainable, then the quality is just going to get worse for everyone.
But this happened before. This is Muzak from the 70s.
It is.
Right? Like,
isn't it?
People hate Muzak.
Exactly.
For my child.
And I think it's going to happen again, right? Like, I think you're going to have exactly that period of this is new ways to lower the cost of music. It makes perfect sense to me that there will be an opportunity to create a brand around human music only.
Right, for sure. Like and other kinds of content too. Like you'll have sort of like
I think you're already seeing a wave of human created things only.
Yeah, I think a lot of podcasts are going to be created that way too.
Mm-hmm. I think part of I think you're right that like this kind of part of what it speaks to is that music serves a lot of different functions, and sometimes it is about this like incredible creativity, human connection. Sometimes it is just like I want noise while I'm writing a blog post. Mm-hmm. But it also there has been other like sort of filler music before. I guess part of the anger here is because there's this sense of a shrinking pot, and then Spotify is taking more of the pot itself through this mechanism that makes, I suspect, musicians particularly.
Leave Kenny G alone.
Would you pay?
How dare you, sir?
An extra $2 or $3 a month for only human people in your Spotify playlist?
Spotify might agree to that. So this is an excerpt from the book, which comes out this month. Liz Pelly, Pelly, the author of Mood Machine, The Rise of Spotify and the Costs of the Perfect Playlist. This excerpts from Harper's Magazine. It will be published in January by One Signal Publishers. It's funny. It's sort of a scandal, but also most of the time people go, yeah, I thought that was probably what was going on. I thought that was what was happening.
The Amazon alkaline battery of music, right?
Yeah, exactly. Are Amazon batteries no good?
No, they're the same. Basically.
They're the same.
They're probably manufactured in the same plant in China for crying out loud. It's just a different cover on them. But I
think that's
Amazon
what we're starting to realize.
Recognizing that you just wanted a battery.
I just need a battery.
We'll sell you ours so we can keep that 25 cents a battery.
Yeah. If you own a VW, you may be VW, Audi, or a Skoda, or a Seat. If you own an EV from those companies, 800,000 EV owners Data was leaked, including their movements. Car scoops right from home to brothels. An unprotected, misconfigured cloud storage. How many times have we heard about misconfigured S3 buckets?
It's unfortunate they cited EVs on this because, this is a problem with any data set.
I do think EVs collect more data, though, don't they, about the driver?
They collect sensitive
and what's going
data
on.
if you think of location data as sensitive.
But
Well, for instance, when that Cybertruck blew up in front of the Trump Hotel, Tesla knew everything about its movements,
But we already knew Tesla had that. And actually,
it's not a surprise.
Yeah.
And I hope Tesla protects it better than
right?
Audi VW does. Let's put it that way.
Tesla got in trouble several years ago for not sharing it with the customer. And the customer wanted it to prove that they didn't speed and either red light cam or it was parking tickets or something.
Right.
And Tesla was like, nobody gets that data.
Yeah. But we do have a little God mode here in the company where we can watch you.
I just bought a Mini. This is related to this, sort of. An EV Mini Countryman.
Oh, the new Countryman.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Lisa
the new
has the Mini
Countryman.
Cooper. She loves it. But it doesn't
And
have any range. Yours probably has some decent range.
It has okay range.
Yeah.
But I had to go through at the dealership 6 screens of privacy settings.
Yeah.
And what was really interesting to me is most of them I couldn't turn off because I wanted the navigation functions, which totally makes sense, but is also So hopefully BMW Mini is not storing these in an unsecured AWS server.
It's a nice car. I like that Countryman. Did you replace your Tesla with that?
I did.
Oh, nice. Good. It's kind of embarrassing to be driving a Tesla these days.
It was a 2014 Tesla.
That's okay. It was time.
It was vintage.
Vintage.
Not as embarrassing as driving a Cybertruck.
That
I
would be
wish I would
embarrassing.
never.
There's somebody in Petaluma who owns one. Every time I see it, I go,
They're probably so
Lake
proud.
Superior State University has been doing this since 1976, publishing a list of words that should no longer ever be used. This is their 2025 banished words list. Are you ready? Cringe, game changer, era. That might have to do with Taylor Swift more than anything else. Dropped. Dropped? Why can't we use dropped? Oh, like a book
It's
dropped
like a
or my
drop.
album dropped or Beyonce's latest drop. Yeah, let's not do that. IYKYK. If you know, you know. They don't like that acronym. Sorry, not sorry. That should have been dropped 3 years ago. Drop it. No more. Skibbity. What the hell does skibbity mean? No one knows. This viral word may have resonated with a younger crowd, but for many, it's just noise. Agatha from Denmark explains, by the way, they get international people on this. Nobody cares about a skibbity toilet, skibbity fizz, or skibbity Ohio phantom tax. At this point, nobody even knows what it means, and it just annoys people.
Skibbity is exactly
Did they
the
just call
thing.
up grandmas and ask them what they think about the language?
Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
Benito, young person, explain. What is a skibbity?
It's nothing. It's actually the thing that kids use to piss off old people. That's all it really is.
Oh.
It's the word
Well,
that
that's why
pisses
we
off
should
old
drop
people.
It's working.
It's working. Agatha hates it. 100%. Is it possible to be overenthusiastic about retiring the phrase 100%? Absolutely. Its overuse has left no room for nuance or doubt. Writes the
Nobody
Lake
says
Superior.
100%. Now it's like 100,000%.
Yeah, right. You can't even say it anymore. You have to say 101%,
110.
110%, 2,000%. Oh, by the way, Pretty Fly for a Psy guy or cis guy has filled us in on the origination of skibbity in our Club Twit Discord. This is why you join the club, for valuable information like this. Skibbity originated as a dance song by the Russian rave band Little Big,
Great song.
released in 2018.
Yeah, it's a remix culture thing. It's like this song that they
Yeah.
put it on this video and then it became this viral thing.
And then there was
it's
a
one of those
YouTube
things.
series, Skibbity Toilet.
Yeah, this is all your base belong to us 20 years later.
Oh, okay. Well,
Exactly,
I like
exactly.
all your base. Don't ban that. That's a good one. Finally, in the top 10, utilize. I agree. Just use. Do not utilize. And period, as in, I have had enough of this list, period. The top 10 banished words.
I can't believe they've actually gotten people to write about this for this many years. And this is the dumbest thing I have seen. I'm so sorry. I'm like, why don't I just talk to, I don't know, my grandpa?
What should we ban, Grandpa? Well, you see, you got to understand, I'm that age. So that's why I like this.
Don't be that guy, man.
You young people make up words.
I'm not that young. My brother.
In my day, it was 23 skidoo.
Exactly.
Public Domain Day, January 1st, 2025. A bunch of works from 1929 are open to all. Sound recordings from 1924 because it's 100 years. A lot of great novels, music, books, plays. Let's see some of the sound recordings. I can play these now. I can play George Gershwin playing the clarinet in Rhapsody in Blue. It's a little scratchy because it's from 1924. Go ahead, take me down, YouTube. That's one of my favorite pieces. Movies. The Marx Brothers Coconuts is now that was their first feature film, is now in the public domain. The Skeleton Dance, Walt Disney.
Very famous.
Yeah, I love the Skeleton Dance. Mm-hmm. There is some Mickey Mouse stuff. In fact, the first spoken Mickey Mouse animations, 12 animations, are now public domain, including the Carnival Kid, which was Mickey's first talking appearance. Are you excited?
I saw somebody on social media pointed out that it's worth emphasizing that this is public domain in the United States. So, don't necessarily try to make money off of Mickey Mouse cartoons in Europe. You may get into trouble.
We're going to get taken down in Estonia. Damn it. I knew it. Bitcoin is now old enough to drink. The very first Bitcoin block was mined January 3rd, 2009 by, of course, Satoshi Nakamoto, the Genesis block. Happy birthday, Bitcoin.
Old enough to drive. It's only 16 years.
Oh, yeah. It drinks in some countries. What's the drinking age in Canada?
Yeah, it depends
18.
on the province, but
18?
Yeah, 18 or 19.
Okay. You got drive, sorry.
Yeah.
Don't drink.
Don't drink.
Bitcoin. If you go home, Bitcoin, you're drunk. And finally, the end of the the end of the barcode. Apparently, QR codes are preferable, and barcodes will be gradually over the next couple of years replaced by QR codes.
They contain more data.
They do. In fact, a lot more data. You can put in a QR code things, like where it was manufactured, the data manufacturer, the Best Buy date, all of that stuff.
But I also point out QR codes are always, I'm stealing your thunder, Stacey. You're going to the same place. You go, you're the professional here.
What?
No, you go.
What's wrong with QR codes?
What? They automatically go to the cloud. It means we now have telemetry every time we scan a code.
You mean I can't, wait a minute. If I scan a QR code, that has to go to the cloud?
It
needs to check what the QR code is, dude.
Yeah, it checks, it goes, it says, hey, this means what? And then that data, and what I was actually going to say is
on device?
No, how could it be on device? Your device doesn't have access to the data that the QR code is indicative of.
Oh, I thought the QR code had the data. It's just a URL.
And I thought, this is what I was going to say. People can easily hack them by placing stickers over QR codes.
Yeah.
And if barcodes are replaced by QR codes, if they're not printed on the package, that is dodgy.
Couldn't you do that with a barcode?
A barcode doesn't take you to a website, though.
Well, and QR code is just data. But usually that data, the normal scanning device is your phone. And if it sees a URL, it sends you the URL.
Yeah. I thought it would be like a barcode where there would be data encoded.
And that is true. It's just think about the normal mechanism for QR.
Normally, it's a URL.
It ends up being a URL. And so it definitely has more data into it. But yeah, all of these things have problems. The barcodes have these problems too. People hack barcodes all the time.
GS1, which is the international nonprofit that maintains the global standard for barcodes. Who are they when they're at home? Who is this cabal of barcode people?
So they did this a couple years ago. They started this process several years. I actually met with someone at CES, like in the one
there you go.
Right after COVID, talking about this very issue. And this was always their goal. So here it is, CES Tech, coming full swing.
By the end of 2027, says Renaud de Barbois, the president and chief of GS1, by the end of 2027, we have defined an ambition. I don't even know what that means. That all retailers
like the concepts of a plan.
We have the concepts of a plan.
I love defining ambitions.
It's not even ambition. We have defined an ambition that by the end of 2027, all retailers in the world will be able to read those next generation barcodes. We think it's doable.
Well, and anything that can read a QR code can read a barcode. So there's not really any incentive to phase anything out, just to push folks to buy the new scanners that can read QR codes.
What is your objection to QR codes, Stacey, besides the fact that they go to the cloud?
Well, that people replace what is the actual one with something that will lead you someplace malicious.
But because
QR
codes are everywhere
processed
now.
On your phone.
Right.
There was actually just a brand new hack that bypassed protections that were I can't remember the details of the hack because there have been like 50 brand new hacks in the last 2 weeks. But there was one that was like pretty terrible, and I can't remember what it bypassed.
A hack of the QR code?
Hold on.
There's so many.
I know. Here's an article on Medium. Generate malicious.
It bypasses browser isolation.
Oh,
that's a good one.
Which is important.
And here's an article from 2011, why the QR code is failing. I think that did not age well.
That was like that guy who said Bluetooth was not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Obviously, we just had to find the use case, which was COVID and restaurants.
From 2011.
Menus?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the stickers would be the number one way of doing that. But you could do that with a barcode. But it wouldn't. Okay. But it would just have different information. Okay.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't actually.
Yeah.
And there'll just be an escalation of encryption games here. So the barcodes that the grocery store are putting on their things will have a code so that if somebody tries to replace it, when they scan them, it's like, that's not our QR.
Yeah. Right. They must do that already.
Well, you could also, like if it's printed on the package, that is more likely to be secure than like what happens today is people will, you actually see it. This happens in Seattle quite often, actually, is you will scan, if you scan a QR code on like a poster on a telephone pole, it's even odds that you'll get like some, if not malicious, then just a teasing website that's like, you doofus.
You'll get rickrolled.
Yeah.
But Joe says no more QR code menus because COVID's over and it's time to bring back actual menus. Do you agree?
I love QR code menus in Japan because in Japan,
really,
yeah, because you scan it, they give you the English menu.
Ah,
yeah,
that's a good idea.
I've also seen QR menus where you could say, "Hey, just show me the vegan options," or just show me no gluten. Like as soon as you have a digital menu, you can do cool things.
Oh,
right?
okay.
They've had ingredient lists and cooking methodologies. Just most QR menus lead to a PDF file, and that is hell.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a lovely time. Thank you for kicking off the year in style. Richard Campbell, we'll see you right back here on Wednesday for Windows Weekly. And of course, every week, 2 podcasts a week with Carl Franklin. He does .NET Rocks and he does Run As Radio. They're all at runasradio.com. And he is officially Canadian. And at some point, I want you to tell us about the Canadian-Denmark Whiskey War.
Oh, the Hans Island battles, yes.
It's a great story. I don't know where. I read about that just the other day. I thought, I got to ask Richard
about
about
that. Went on for many years.
Bless you, Rich. It's great to see you. Thank you for 2 weeks in a row now.
Yeah.
That's a new record. Thank you. I appreciate it. Great to see you. Thank you, Stacey Higginbotham. Especially thank you for the work you do at Consumer Reports to make the world better for all of us. You're going to be all about router security this year, huh? This is the year of router security.
Router security and end-of-life support for your IoT devices, or
Right
rather,
on.
telling you about it,
So you'll have a sell-by date on all your IoT devices.
basically.
Yeah. This is not going to work in 7 years.
An expiration date. Well, it was not even. It's called a minimum guaranteed support time frame. It's the worst naming.
Minimum guaranteed support time frame.
The sell-by dates were just banned in California because they don't actually mean anything.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they confuse the heck out of people.
Oh, they do. We're going to do another coffee segment. And one thing I learned from Mark Prince, the coffee geek, is it's the roast date that you want to look at, not the sell-by date, the roasted date. Of course, if you're eating calamari, all bets are off. Thank you, Stacey. It's great to see you. We'll do the book club in about a month. If you're a member of the club, go vote. There are 4 excellent books, and it's neck and neck between Orbit and another one. So it's
Really, you guys?
You don't want to. What do you want to do? What did you skew the vote? What do you want to? What do you want to read?
I thought that Orbital would be a hard sell for people, and
Apparently not. It's leading right now.
Okay.
Go if you're a club member, go vote, and if you're not a club member, join the club. It's only $7 a month. Makes a big difference for us in the our bottom line, but it also gives you great benefits like Stacey's book club and ad-free versions of all the shows. You can find out more at twit.tv/clubtwit. Anthony Ha, weekend editor. Is the weekend over for you now officially?
I think that if something crazy happened, it would still be my responsibility. I think I would have an excuse that I was on the show.
I was busy talking about the news and plugging TechCrunch.
We've got a bunch of CES reporters on the ground right now. Means
I bet.
I'm off the hook.
Yeah, nothing's going to happen today. It's CES Day. It's great to have you on. Thank you, Anthony. Really appreciate it. At Original Content is his podcast. What's that all about?
I think actually I realized At Original Content was the handle on Twitter, but then we're now mostly on Instagram. So we're at Original Content Pod on Instagram, and it's reviewing all the new streaming shows. We're going to do the new season of Squid Game next.
We've never needed you more. There's so much content, and I can't watch it all. I need to know what I should watch.
That's the idea behind the podcast.
Squid Game, really?
Squid Game, yeah, it's back. I mean, Squid theme on this episode, but it's back. Second season not as good, but that's okay. I mean, the first season was so incredible.
Yes. All right. I'm looking forward to Severance coming back in a week. That's good.
Yes.
I got to know what happened. They better say, because I'll be mad if they Lost. They just keep stringing us on. That'd be mad. OriginalContentPodcast.com. If you're this is the audio program you're looking for. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Stacey. Thanks to all of you for joining us. It's good to have you back for a brand new year. I think this is going to be, I didn't ask you all this. I should have asked you this, what the big story of 2025 will be. I think we'd all agree it's going to be AI, right?
Yes.
Right?
Certainly the investment into it, whether or not.
Richard says he hopes not.
How many years in a row?
Sorry. Yeah, but this is the year AI gets smart.
Sure, it was last year.
They said that last year.
Last year?
No.
Okay.
I think we're going to, the big story this year will be massive infrastructure failure in the United States.
Oh,
Right.
that's good. Even bridges coming down and stuff like that. Oh, no.
Man, that's
I'm not
scary.
sure if it's climate change, if it's cybersecurity, if it's corruption that just totally destroys
The whole thing.
agencies that, but
All
like
of the above.
infrastructure failure. That's my vote. I hope I'm wrong.
I hope I'm right and you're wrong. Thank you, Stacey. On that up note, we do
Little Mary
Twig.
Sunshine.
We do a Twig, by the way, on Wednesday, a week from Wednesday, we're going to talk about the Supreme Court and TikTok. But all the shows begin up again. This is the first show of a brand new year. We do Twit every Sunday afternoon, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. 2200 UTC. You can watch us live on 8 different platforms. If you're a club member, you get exclusive behind the velvet rope access in our Club Twit Discord. But you can also watch us on YouTube, youtube.com/twit/live. Twitch.tv/twit. We're on Twitch as well. We're on x.com. Easy to find us because we're usually the number one show on X because there's not a whole lot of other stuff going on. So just go to your front page. You'll probably see us there. What else? Kick, LinkedIn, Facebook, and TikTok, at least for 2 more weeks. So watch us live if you want to, but you don't have to because, of course, it's a podcast. So you can download the shows from our website. There's audio or video at twit.tv. You can watch a YouTube channel dedicated to This Week in Tech. YouTube.com/twit has links to all of our shows. Each of them has their own YouTube channel, which is good for sharing. Like if there's a little clip about calamari you want to share, you could just take that and send that off to your calamari-loving friend, or you can subscribe in your favorite podcast client. That's the pro tip. That way you'll get it automatically the minute we're done every week, just in time for your Monday morning commute. Thank you, Stacy, Anthony, Richard. Thanks to all of you for joining us. We will see you next week. This is, by the way, this is a big year for Twit. This is completing our 20th year, beginning our 21st year. 20 years in podcasting. That's the equivalent of, I don't know what. In dog years, it's 140, but it's got to be more than that in podcast years. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you next time. And as I have said for the last 20 years, another Twit is in the can. Bye-bye.
This is amazing.